All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Truth Warrior. Today it is Tuesday, October the 14th, 2025. I hope you are well wherever you are watching this. Thank you so much for jumping on this live with me, or if you're watching the archive after this has gone out. I have so many things to cover and so many things to say. I honestly didn't even know where to begin. So I'm just going to begin with a sort of remix today on a few presentations that I've done in depth, and we're going to go over some of these points that I just think are so crucial in the current discussions going on all over the internet, all over the cafes, all over the places that I'm listening into. Is that everybody is talking about current events and politics and history and where we're going next, and all these wars going on and all these things that are inexplicable to so many people. And everybody's got an opinion. That's obviously great and to be expected. But in my opinion, much of that is not as educated as it should be. And I realize that we're up against a massive propaganda machine. We're up against bot farms. We're up against psychological operations. We're up against such a huge mountain of counter information to everything you thought you knew, and every variation of opinion that you can possibly imagine, that the average person that is not dedicating more than 5 minutes of research to these subjects, to history, to the things that are going to be very relevant that we're going to be covering today that I want to go through with you. The average person just doesn't have the time, probably doesn't even have the desire, really. And I don't even blame anybody, for that. But in the end, we find that a lot of these people are the loudest in the room, and some of it's organic, some of it's financed. And so, I know it's confusing out there for people. So I feel like my job here on this show is to, at the very least, give you some receipts, some sources, some books to look into, some facts to look into, so that you can balance your mind as you're navigating the minefield of information that you're being exposed to. And I hope that you don't just conclude on it. I honestly hope that even after this presentation today and this show, as I always say, I hope you're not concluding on my words or my opinions either, because I know where my limitations are, and I realize full well that I could also be wrong about certain things. And I'm only one person. I can only do so much here. But I really feel like I've spent the time. I have put the time in. I have interviewed a lot of the great minds that spent their lives on many different facets of the research I'm going to present to you today. And I hope that you realize that I also can't even present the depth of this research to you in a podcast or even in a series of podcasts. That for the amount of information we're going to go through, and this probably will be a longer show today, this is the newspaper clippings version of this rabbit hole, of this field of research that we're going to talk about. So I just hope I do justice to it. I hope that you'll pick the ball up and run with it and think for yourself. If I could ever be accused of being a member of a cult, the cult by which I am a member is the cult of thinking for yourself, using that beautiful, powerful mind that you've been given, using the combination of your logic, your reasoning faculties, your intuition, and your curiosity to drive you towards seeking the truth about what's really going on. And, there may be people that I can already see in the chats that are questioning some of my recent stances and posts and whatnot going on X. You can follow me, by the way, on X at Truth Warrior Dad. That is the place I do most of my ramblings and rantings and say my little 2 cents on current events as they're unfolding. So if you want to check me out over there, you can. And yeah, you're going to be tested. I'm here to test ideas. I'm here to challenge where you're sitting. I'm here to challenge where I'm sitting. And that's going to obviously not be fully understood by many, and that's totally fine with me. But for those that do understand what's going on here, and those that at least find some value in what I'm presenting and what I have been presenting, strap yourselves in, because we are going to go right into some very deep waters here. And I've called this one the Occult Roots of Totalitarianism. I had recently done a show on the occult roots of communism. This was on my Substack. And I was going to do this particular one in a very different way for my paid subscribers on Substack, but I decided, no, I'm going to do a more short form version of each of these points and put this out publicly because it's just, I think, so crucial. And then for those of you amazing people that do support my work over on Substack, it is the only support that I get. I don't use sponsors any longer on this show. No, I am not being paid by anybody to present my research or my opinions. And so Substack is where it's at if you'd like to support my work. And I do have a huge archive of information for you there that I've put exclusively for those of you that would wish to do so. But for today, this one has to go out on all the public platforms because I think it's that crucial. And if you want to get the original sort of thread of where my thinking has, I feel like, evolved over time as I've continued researching, just something that I like to do is never stay stuck in the mud, never stay stuck on one way of seeing something, but to constantly go in and keep looking at it from different perspectives. And when you do that, you're going to piss everybody off. And I realize that. But such is the nature of trying to investigate the facts of reality. It's just that's what has to happen. There's a reason, my friends, that a lot of people in both the mainstream media and what we laughingly call the alternative media today, there's a reason they don't want to leave certain places. There's a reason they don't want to get out on a branch and try to think a little bit differently about something. And that is because a lot of people that do podcasting and writing or journalism, over time, they get trained by their audience. And I don't believe in that personally. Not to say I wouldn't want to grab your questions and see where you guys are interested in. I always field those and try to craft some of the presentations based on questions or points of debate or points of contention or whatever you're yelling at me in all caps in the comments. And I try to craft that and go, okay, let me address some of these concerns. Let me bring out, some research on some of these points. But in the same token, I have never wanted to be the person that just goes along with whatever the latest trend is and go along with the current of the crowd, wherever the crowd is at. That's not where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to go with where my heart leads me, where my intuition leads me, where my research is leading me, where current events as they're unfolding is leading me to look into. And that's where I feel that. So hopefully that at least gives you some explanation as to the current direction that we're going. And in the end, as I always say, you have this amazing power where if you don't like something, you don't agree with something, something is making you feel too triggered or whatever, you have the ability to just skip to another video or go to another channel at any time. You can hit the red button and off you go. No hard feelings. It's totally cool. We do not have to agree on everything, my friends. That is not how true independent and true free thinking works. And so just thought I should lead with that before we dive in. But this one is called The Occult Roots of Totalitarianism. And I've been doing a series on my Substack for a while now, talking about totalism or totalitarianism. Okay, the two terms mean the same thing. Basically, the ideology, realizing that these political movements or revolutionary movements or let's all change the world together movements, a lot of them are ideologically based, meaning they have a system of thought behind them in the same way that every religion has a system of thought behind it, or every social movement or political movement has a sort of system of thought behind it. There's what you call the premise of an argument, the premise of a position that you're going to take. Okay. There's the foundation of every building that you see. And then there's the things that stack on top of that foundation. Then you put the roof on top of it. And hopefully you built it correctly from the bottom up so that the whole thing doesn't implode into its own footprint, which in the world of philosophy and geopolitics, many of the ideas that are put out and taken as authority by the masses, that's exactly what it is. It's a house built on straw. It's a house that seems powerful and strong, but has really got nothing to it. And that's what I do. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for contradictions. I'm looking for bold-faced lies when it comes to what the accepted new dogma is on the internet, what the trends are. And I'm trying to find out, what is there any real substance behind these sort of sacred cows and these ways of seeing things that we've been taught? Or is there another layer? That's true alternative research, by the way. That's how you do it. And you don't have to conclude on any of it. You're surveying options. There's options on the table. There's puzzle pieces on the table that you as an individual are going to look at and you're going to go, I wonder if there's anything to that. What an interesting argument. What an interesting point. What a thing that was occulted from my view that is now right out in front of me like the shining sun on my face. It's right there. I can now see it. But it contradicts other aspects of this ideology that I was jumping into. So I better look into it further and inquire more. This is the true alternative research. And sadly, a lot of people aren't doing this anymore. We live in an age of fear that's dominating everything. Mass hysteria, mass formation psychosis. It doesn't just happen on the normie level, the left, with the woke right, whatever you want to call it. It happens as a psychological phenomena in all walking human beings. As it's a potential for all human beings walking, past, present, future, because we're dealing with human consciousness. We're dealing with traumatized psyches. When you understand that, what we're going to cover today is going to make a lot more sense, because you can't just read it on the surface. You can't just read about the history of totalitarianism, for example, or the history of fascism or socialism or communism or capitalism or Islamism or Judaism or Christianity or Buddhism or friggin' whatever it is. Cults, the history of them, the ideologies behind them. You're not just going to read about that on the surface level and really get anything out of it. I used to look at it on the surface level for so long, and I definitely got more than I would have if I had not looked at it at all. I mean, that's the positive. But then you get into this long enough and you realize, oh, right, surface level is just that's yellow belt. That's the beginning. That's the opening of the eyes. The fact, okay, I'm committing to this endeavor now. I've seen enough to know there's something there. I see some smoke. I wonder if I can get to where's the fire? Who built the fire? What was the intention behind the person that built the fire? What are the calculations of damage that are going to be caused by this fire? Right. And what's the color of the fire? Like, what's fueling the fire? It gets deeper, is what I'm here to say. It gets deeper than just the surface layer. That's why I call it the occult. The occult, that's an astrological term, talking about the veiling of the moon or the sun, because it's being occulted. It's being hidden from view. It's there. It's there. We know it's there. It's just we can't see it right now because it's being hidden or covered. Okay, so to take something from occulted knowledge, that's what happened to human knowledge. It became occulted from the blinding sun of your mind that obscured everything from your vision. And so we go with the surface level. We accept things as they are. We don't really require much more explanation for the most part. I'm speaking in general here, obviously, not this audience. You guys love this stuff, hopefully. But it's that which has been hidden from you, right? Whether you, and there's two agents that can hide things from you. There's the other, and then there's you, right? So the other people that might want to hide it. Maybe the government doesn't want you to know about it. Maybe, people in the clergy or the priesthood don't want you to know. There's been secrets hidden from the public mind. They've been occulted. Secrets about history, secrets about human psychology, secrets about human origins, secrets about the origins of all of our belief systems, right? Secrets of the founding of civilization. And not all the secrets are bad or evil. Some of the secrets, you start to read about why they were held secret, and you start looking around at the average person walking around. You see the level of mass hysteria and mass formation psychosis that's grabbing everybody everywhere in different ways and dividing us more. And you go, well, maybe I understand why some of this shit was occulted from humanity. It's like, there's a reason you occult things from your kids until they are ready. Isn't that the way? We would all like to say, I'm totally open and honest with my kids. I tell them every single darn thing. Well, you might want to rail that in a little bit if you don't want to traumatize the kid, if you don't want to overexpose them to something that their little developing mind can't quite handle yet, right? That's what a job of a parent is. That's what the job of a teacher is. I even have to see this in my martial arts and coaching business, because I work with children that are all coming from different backgrounds, traumatic backgrounds, abuse, uh, psychological issues, autism, ADHD, no confidence, right? Like all these things, right? Obesity, uh, eating disorders. I've seen it all. Okay. Disabilities, missing limbs. I've seen it all in these kids. And my job is to take all these people, all comers, and try to figure out a way to activate them as an individual. And I use the warrior tradition and the world of philosophy and physical activity to do it, martial arts to do it. And when a new white belt walks in those types of conditions, broken, afraid of their own shadow, or just even just as simply as they don't know what they're doing yet, obviously, everything is hard at first till you put some time in. And then over time, you get better at it. And then over time, I can unoccult things for you. I can start revealing more secrets to you over time, but you're not ready for that one yet because you haven't really mastered the first level. And then later, you're going to get a richer education because you participated at the basic level. That's how we do it. So I'm using that as an example as like there is a necessity for guarding knowledge, the guardians of knowledge. Not all the people guarding knowledge from humanity are evil or have evil designs. Many of them do. And absolutely, that's part of this history. Okay. You got the dark wizards and you got those of serving truth and the light. And they want to take from that which was hidden and give it to the people, but they realized that, when the good are fighting against evil, they're realizing the evil isn't just up there in government and in the media and in the military industrial complex and in rogue nations or whatever secret societies. They realize the evil exists as a potentiality in the heart of every living human being, and that we as individuals will do evil to ourselves before accepting the truth, let alone those that are willing to go and do evils to others before they accept the truth, right? So this is something that's an old thing that's known in the secret societies of the world, in the clergy. It was a relationship between the cult leader and the cult follower. Been trying to harp on that for years. It's easy to point it one way until you realize, right? Yeah, a crazy psychotic cult built around totalist principles wouldn't be able to survive a nanosecond in reality if it didn't have all these raving fans supporting it. Right? So this is where we are. This is the origin. The origin, what I call it, the occult roots of totalitarianism exist within the framework of your own mind. Okay? When we know this as individuals, now you are more free to do your research in a proper context. Having things in context is extremely important when you're studying anything. You got to know the premise, the counterpoints, the pro points, the inside out, upside down, and backwards of a thing. And then you have to realize that your own mind is going to edit the process of discovery the entire time. That's the inner opposer, the inner conspiracy, trying to say, oh, we don't want to think about that. Those are hard thoughts to think. Those are offending our sentimentality. Those are making us feel uncomfortable. Those are challenging the paradigm that is giving us the security of comfort, or at least the illusion of security and comfort. And so we got to edit that. We don't want to go there. That's uncomfortable. The body, by natural response, is going to edit your reality for you. Your brain, your mind is going to edit your reality for you to make it more comfortable for whatever it was that you built as your framework and your own internal premise. So these are all dynamics we got to think about. Now, before we go into this, I want to open with this one video that I found this morning on my Instagram. It was just, the guy summed it up. I don't even know who this guy is. I just found his video. Kudos to the gentleman that made this like 3-minute breakdown of totalitarianism and what's really going on. He brought up Hannah Arden and her take, and we're going to read from her in a little bit, because she just definitely nailed some crucial points about some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But let me just open up with this quick little video, and then we'll get right into it here. All right, here we go.
What's occurring socially on the left, besides being Marxist in nature, is a phenomenon known as collectivism. Collectivism is an ideological and cultural system where the group's needs, goals, and interests are prioritized over individual desires, emphasizing shared responsibility, interdependence, and community cohesion. To put it more bluntly, groupthink. This groupthink is no more obvious than when interacting with individuals in said group. You've likely noticed they've all started using identical words and phrases, terminology in arguments, like they're all reading off of the same script. That's because they've all begun to think in the same way, and see the world in the same way, and describe it in the same way. They've all begun to see those who disagree with them in the same way as well, as fascists, Nazis, racists, bigots, etc. They simply can't comprehend how anyone could think differently than the group. They are in essence seeing the world as a hive mind, and in doing so, are increasingly viewing those that do not as the enemy. Hence the increase in irrational, hostile, and often violent behavior. At a certain point, collectivism simply morphs into totalitarianism. If you don't think this has already begun in cities like LA, Portland, and Chicago, you're just not paying attention. You can see the beginning stages of it now nationwide. Large numbers of the left saying that political violence is justified. Those saying speech itself is violent. All it takes are a few collectivists in positions of power to start arresting people under the guise of whatever they want to call it. Dangerous speech, speech that incites violence, etc. As is happening across England and Germany and Spain as we speak. Hannah Arendt, the German-born political theorist who wrote extensively on totalitarianism, argued as far back as 1951 that totalitarianism is distinct from traditional forms of tyranny or dictatorship because it seeks to dominate every aspect of life, both public and private, and to remake human nature itself. In her analysis of Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, she emphasized how ideology and terror combine to unify thought and behavior while demonizing anyone that does not agree. For Arendt, totalitarian regimes aim not merely at political control, but at erasing individuality, spontaneity, and plurality, the qualities that make human freedom possible. She warned modern conditions such as mass loneliness, the breakdown of traditional institutions, and the manipulation of truth can create fertile ground for totalitarian movements. Her work remains a warning about how fragile freedom and democracy can be. Consider that warning compared to what we are seeing today. I cannot overemphasize the danger of what's happening in the movement on the far left. This is what I saw on my Facebook feed the night Charlie Kirk was killed. Normal people completely antipathetic to a person being murdered because they didn't believe in his political beliefs. This means that the collective extremism has already started to seep into the mainstream. We need to first understand and accept that, and then push back on it aggressively. That is why it's imperative to reach as many people as you can and shake them out of the waking slumber they're in. Because at some point, it will simply be too late.
All right. So, I mean, he's very clear, makes all the points, and he's kind of said it all. I don't really have much more to add other than the entire presentation to follow, but he's just pointing some things out. Collectivism begins, and it's usually formed around some sort of fear or some sort of social pariah or a social issue. And it's fear that drums the mass together, because that's what happens. An individual would have no reason to go and huddle with everybody and become part of the crowd unless he was afraid. That's why you go to the crowd, is because you're afraid that you can't deal with the situation by yourself. So you got to go team up with other people in order to deal with the threat, right? That's how it begins. And then you get the ideologues, the programmers in there, and they are programming and telling you how to be in the collective and what your mantra is and what your talking points are going to be and what the battle is and who the bad guy is and where you're going to fight it and how you're going to fight it. And then it grows from a collectivism that's formed into totalitarianism. And we just have so many historical accounts and precedents to flesh that argument out. I don't really think that's an argument that needs to be made. It's very obvious. And to me, looking at this, from a certain perspective, I'm realizing, and I'm sure all of you are realizing, that that's what's happening in front of our eyes, and it has been for quite some time. Okay, if you want to start back at the pandemic, if you want to go back to 2016, if you want to go back to 2012, if you want to go back to 9/11, if you want to go back to, I don't know, World War II, doesn't matter. You're just getting different expressions of the same tendency in the human being to go down that path that he just described. Okay, and many have written about it. I've covered them, but I felt like, okay, that was a good video. He made a good case. I think we're all seeing a lot of what he was mentioning there. And we'll get to some bits of Hannah Arendt and her writing later. I found some of the gems. There's some things I disagree with her on as a writer, but at the same time, she made so many just incredible points and said it in a way that nobody else could, and wrote about totalitarianism a way that's very valuable for people to try to read into and understand, that, we can't pass up the opportunity to hear what she's got to say. So I'll save that for later. But for now, I just want to go through this as quick as I can here for you. Got some slides and some reading, because my point has always been, everybody's fighting over which brand of totalism is the worst one, is the objective of the global cabals to try to create this one world government around, who's behind it, all the things that come with trying to study this big mystery that we're all looking at. And my argument has been that all of these different isms are just variations of the same arguments, the same premise, the same worldview, the same self view of the people that write it, right? And so you can kind of get a description of the things that align together when you stack them all together side by side. When you stack up, this was a point I made in my previous show about fascism. G. Edward Griffin was making this point. This was how he came to his conclusion on collectivism, was he went, when I read into these different isms, and I actually got source documentation right from the horse's mouth on Mussolini, Stalin, Hitler, all these different totalitarians. And I've expanded that in my research to what went down in Africa under Idi Amin, what went in Pol Pot, Cambodia, North Korea, at different times in America and in the West. It's reared its ugly head within the houses of religion. All of them, none come out with an exception. There's just as much socialism running around in Christianity as there is in Judaism, as there is in Islam, as there is in Buddhism. It's just showing different variant forms of the same premise. And my argument has been that premise was given to us by secret societies, by the occult world, by the real Setians, man. Okay, the real brass behind this shit. The ideologues that trace their premise and their origin of their ideas back to ancient Egypt and maybe even before. Okay, this gets into the world of studying the differences between, say, the Hermetic tradition and the Gnostic tradition. Where did the split happen? How did that happen in the priesthoods of old? How did those ideas differentiate from each other? What was the good parts of each one and the bad parts of each one? And then how did that filter into what we now call religion, and then later into what we now call politics? Because I'm here to tell you, there's not a huge difference between those different spheres. As much as we want them to be, we want there to be separation between cult ideology and state practice and public practice. But sadly, that's just not the way of it. That's the real conspiracy, is that there is no separation between that. There is no real separation between the occult world and the political world or the religious world. So again, if you're operating on surface level, superficial understanding, quick little soundbite understanding on all these subjects, you're going to get caught in the weeds. I know, because I've been caught in the weeds before and I know what it feels like. So I've been struggling to free myself from being caught in those weeds for some time. And what my research here is me just describing my own efforts and my own resources and my own researches into untangling myself from those weeds. And I just only hope that it can assist you on your journey as well. That's literally the only reason I'm doing this. So let's get into it. I'm going to break this down. Now, some of these clips are little pieces from past presentations, like I said, that are on my Substack Premium. A couple bucks a month. You can get all the deep dives, numerous subjects. There's a whole playlist there. I'm always adding more. So check that out. But this will be a condensed version because these points are extremely crucial right now. Okay, so here it is. Here's the occult history of totalitarianism. Jumping right into it. So this is a article that was written back in, so here it is, originally published in the Revolutionary Internationals 1864 to 1943. That's how long that, I guess, that paper ran. And Stanford University Press officially published it in 1966. It was resubmitted back in 2007. So this is an old article, and it's written by Boris I. Nikolevsky, and it's entitled Secret Societies and the First International. The First International, right? Think about what that is. The International. Actually, we talk about that a lot. You'll hear even my colleague Michael Tessarian on the Unslaved podcast, which again, there's your advanced section of research to go over. If you want to check more about this out, go to unslaved.com. But he would often talk about the international. And I remember hearing him mention it. I'm like, oh, I think I know what he's talking about, right? It's like this new world order or whatever, but he's using their words. He was using their words. They call it the international. And you have different versions of the international, don't you? What is the international? An international grouping of people that have an agenda. Okay. So I brought everybody's attention to, for example, in my Cult of the Medics research, we looked at the people that brought you the COVID doctrine. It was a doctrine. It was a belief system. The belief system coming from particular groups, particular international organizations that said, hey, world, we've got a threat. We've got this virus or whatever the hell it is, this flu flying around right now. And it came from China. And so we're going to move in and totally change your society in order to address the threat. And of course, anybody that's a student of history and knows exactly who these people are, their organizations, and what their philosophical worldview and premise is, admitted from their own mouths, by the way. You don't have to make it up. You don't have to theorize about it. These guys are all too happy to tell you bluntly what their agendas are, okay? We find out that they create an international shift through the World Health Organization and the UN as to how countries in the West are going to be dealing with pandemic response. And they say, we need to change fundamentally because of the nature of the threat, of course. We need to fundamentally change and rewrite the way we are going to deal with this threat. And the way we're going to do it just so happens to align identically with the totalitarian playbook. And everybody bought it hook, line, and sinker because of why? Fear. Fear is the mind killer. Propaganda is its delivery system. And you're connecting with it because you chose fear over your reason, over the time that it takes to study it and go, wait a minute, they're telling me something. They're selling me a change, a drastic, radical change, a revolutionary change in how we are going to be dealing with this pandemic. And that's just one example. They're doing the same thing with climate change, aren't they? We need a radical, complete, and total reconstruction of our entire society here in the West in order to address the threat of climate change. Give me any of these things that you're seeing that are being used as the argument to do what? All of them, every single one of them. This isn't left or right, guys. This is just, I'm telling you, this is from the international now. Through their media orgs, through the money that they have to pump up influencers all over the internet, to fund and finance these bot farms that are making it look like things are way bigger than they are, right? They are trying to give you a reason, a justification, so that you go along with the massive, drastic changing of the fabric of your civilization and just hand them the keys to the kingdom and go, well, you guys seem to have a plan, so go ahead. Here you go. Here's the keys to the kingdom. And they go, wow, thank you so much. That was easy. And then you just, if you haven't gone through the stuff we're going to go through, you're not going to understand the premise of this. So I'm going on this rant about the international because it's very, very related, because what we discovered was that the head guy in the United Nations, the head guy, the chief of the bloody thing. Okay. There's been many chiefs, and many of them were ex-KGB and ex-Nazis, by the way. Okay. But today's guy, guess where he comes from? Before he becomes the chief of the United Nations, we're talking about Antonio Gutierrez, okay? Go look him up. He was the head of an organization called the Socialist International. Did you know this? I've said this many times. If you've been listening for a while, apologize. We got new people coming in all the time, and they're very welcome. Go look it up. Look up the people that we listen to. Okay, and I hope I don't have to really drill this home now in 2025. I think everybody's starting to realize that they pulled the wool over our eyes. I hope you saw that. But it's the point about the international we're going to read about, because the international we're going to read about has many tentacles to it. And it has a belief structure, like Islam has a belief structure, or Christianity has a belief structure, or the Mormons have a belief structure, or the Scientology has a belief structure, or the cult, the family in Australia, headed by a very wealthy woman who lived to the ripe old age of like 98 years old and never really saw any punishment for the crimes that she committed against children in her cult. There was a belief structure at the root of it all. There's a belief structure behind your average serial killers that you're watching the true crime documentaries on Netflix about. It's a belief structure. What's the belief structure of these internationalists? Well, I once upon a time was making the argument that their belief structure is to eradicate Western civilization and replace it with something else, an international governing system run under a particular ideology. You're not just going to blow up the world and rebuild it without having a new ideology to build the new one upon, right? If you're going to create a new world order where you're in charge, you can't just blow it up and not replace it with anything. You got to blow it up and replace it with something. And it's that something that I have spent the time in to research, because I wanted to know. I'm like, okay, well, they're saying a lot of shit about kumbaya and world peace and coming together as one and all this stuff. But is it really that? Because all the cult leaders I studied said the same shit. All the totalitarian dictators of the 20th century said the same shit, just in different ways, speaking to their very particular demographics and people that come from their culture. So the way it's going to be expressed in the Islamic world is going to be different than the way it's expressed in, I don't know, China and Cambodia. And then the way it's going to be expressed in Africa is going to be different than the way it's expressed in Russia or Ukraine. It's the difference. It's going to be expressed in Canada, Australia, Britain. God save Britain, man. How's it going, guys? My goodness. But here I am in Canada, so who am I to speak? It's going to be different in America and than it is in Israel, right? Or anywhere else. There's a variation of this at the core behind. This is the hidden occult hand. The premise, the argument, the ideology, the worldview, the psychology of totalitarianism. You got to find out the roots of it. What is it made of? You got to get a magnifying glass and go in there and, oh my God, it's a friggin' Swiss watch. It's complicated. It's not obvious. It's hidden because the implications of the full ideology being revealed to the general public would be that it would be people would reject it. I promise you, if you knew behind the nice writing on the Club of Rome website or the Vatican website or the UN website or the World Economic Forum website or the polished script teleprompter readings given by your politicians or the people that are being paid in your media to parrot the same thing, or the people being put up there in your so-called alternative media saying the same thing. When you identify the root of it, what it's made of, what the rhetoric is, what the symbolism is, then you can't be fooled anymore. You're not playing this dog and pony show anymore. So now we can get into this article by Nick Levesky here. So just a quick one about who he is. B.I. Nick Levesky was a curator of the Menshevik collection at the Hoover Institution. You need to know who these people are. An active member of the Russian Social Democratic Party, he became director of the Moscow Marx Engels Institute after the Revolution of 1917. Deported from Russia in 1922, he later became director of the International Institute of Social History in Amsterdam. So he's somebody that lived it, was part of it, watched it happen, and then broke rank and then wrote about it. This is where a lot of the people I'm going to be referencing here, these are insiders. These are people who've lived it, seen it, were part, they've seen it all. That's why I've been telling you guys, go listen to people like Yuri Bezmenov, go listen to people that lived under totalitarianism. Just so you know, if you live in Canada and anywhere else, I'm sure, especially now in the West, but if you live in Canada right now, you are literally surrounded by people who have immigrated here that lived it. You should talk to them. I'm sorry to say it, I'm getting more wisdom and insight and information about what I'm sharing with you from people who have immigrated to Canada from these countries that suffered under totalitarianism, meaning these are the true people that came here legally. They came here because they definitely wanted to assimilate to Canadian culture, because they wanted to get the hell away from the totalist structure that they were fleeing. So they actually came here. They wanted to be a part of the civilization. They're not people that are freeloaders and trying to get behind the guards and come in and just leech off society and bring their totalism here. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual immigrants that came here at different points in history, came from Romania, came from China, came from Russia, came from Poland, came from Israel, came from Iran, came from the Middle East, came from Egypt, came from, all these different areas. And you listen to them, and it always blows my mind that I could be talking to a guy who survived, or his children or his parents or whatever survived what was going down in the Soviet Union. And then I can go listen to somebody that lived under the Iranian regime. And then I can go listen to someone that saw what went down in Cambodia. And it's so crazy to me how these people have never met each other. But when they're talking to me and I'm just sitting there taking notes, whether they know it or not, I'm like, well, I'm here to learn. They're telling me the exact same story. Never ceased to amaze me. So that was my anecdotal phase. Well, people are like telling me this. Okay, let's go follow up on it. And then that's how you get into this kind of source material. You go to the horse's mouth. So here's what we're going to get into now. He says this: secret societies, outwardly of Masonic form, played a decisive role in the forming of the first international. He's talking about the first international high table of globalists. Okay. The struggle between the members and allies of these societies on the one hand, and Karl Marx and his working class supporters on the other, constituted the inner life of the International in its early years, and in the end was responsible for its demise. Because of the importance and the complexity of the problem, and because it has been unexplored to date, I shall limit my essay to this rather narrow subject. Meaning I got to tell you a hell of a lot more, but let's just stay focused on this. Furthermore, I shall deal primarily with secret societies having their roots in France, a country with special interest to the historian of the First International. So we're going back to the French Revolution and probably before. He wouldn't get into this, but this is where you get into Michael Tsarian's research on, say, the Templars. That would be a good place to start for that. He continues, therefore, this essay should be regarded as a preliminary report which aims not to exhaust the subject, but to draw attention to it and to demonstrate its importance. And guys, that's all I'm trying to do with you here today, is draw attention to this subject and demonstrate its importance. Official and underground masonry. Did you know that there's two different things? There's the official history, and then there's the underground history. Okay. And I should say this real quick. I'm also in a nuanced position about masonry. Many Masons who joined masonry historically and presently went there with a noble pursuit of wanting to learn the ancient knowledge from the mystery schools, because masonry was bragging, hey, we've got the lost archive of Aladdin's cave of knowledge here, which they definitely got their hands on at different points in history. But the only way we're going to tell it to you is through all these rites and rituals. And basically we're going to set up a global fraternity. And, and then we've got, for just to fast forward for people, because many of you have already heard this in my previous work, we've got numerous admissions, once again from the horse's mouth, of top level Masons in Europe in the 1800s that were talking about the fact that the Masonic lodges got infiltrated by an internationalist cult that just so happened to be basically a solar cult that used things like hypnotism, propaganda, black magic, espionage, and conspiracy as its modus operandi. This is coming from top-level dukes and shit from the 1700s. This isn't coming from Joe Schmo sitting on the street corner, okay? And even if Joe Schmo said it, if he said it and it was true, we would be forced to believe him. But I'm just saying, we're talking about some very prominent people here. Okay. So just keep that in mind. But just keep in mind that that doesn't mean we're going to tar and feather every single Freemason out there. Most of the people on the lower level have no idea that the whole system was used because of its compartmentalized structure, because of the fact that they saw power in the symbolism, because they understood psychology and why we are attracted to that symbolism. And they also knew the roots of the knowledge held within Freemasonry didn't belong to Freemasonry, that they simply discovered it and maybe originally had some benign and moral, noble ideals of trying to help unite humanity using this ancient lost knowledge and all of that. And it slowly got turned into a revolutionary movement, right? It got corrupted. Surprise, surprise. So a thing that's corrupted is a little bit different than the thing itself being just corrupt by the fact that it exists, right? So we got to be careful with that as well. So I just want to put that nuance out for you, but let's continue. Freemasonry was never a unified movement. Here you go. He's opening up with why you've got to, have a little nuance here. Freemasonry was never a unified movement, even within a particular country. Now, just saying that doesn't mean the people above who are using Freemasonry weren't unified, but that's another conversation. He continues, this is even truer if we speak of the political role of Freemasonry, and particularly in France, in the period that interests us. It's very interesting. That is the period in which the First International was formed. So he's drawing your attention to the fact that it just so coincidentally happens to be that we have the forming of the First International around the same time that Masonry was really making a big swing in France. Okay, so is that a coincidence? I'll leave it to you. After the defeat of the revolutions of 1848 in all the countries of Western Europe, leadership of the official Masonic organizations passed into rightist hands, so conservatives. Of course, there was various shades of rightist leadership, but they were merely shades, kind of like the conservatives we have in Canada. In France, Napoleon III established a distinguished dictatorship over Masonry, placing men he had personally selected at the head of its official organizations. First, Prince Lucien Murat, later Marshal Magnan. These appointees carried out the policy laid down by the government. They maintained a strict surveillance of the lodges, suppressing the slightest hints of opposition to the regime. This kind of Masonry, of course, played no part at all in the formation of the First International and could not have played any. He's just giving you the history of how this all folded out or unfolded. True, after 1865, with the death of Marshal Magnan and the adoption of a new and more liberal Masonic constitution, so they literally adapted the constitution of Masonry towards a liberal bend. Okay, just saying. The situation changed, he says. The lodges began to open their doors to free discussion of social and political questions, and were thus gradually transformed into recruiting centers for members of various revolutionary organizations, the sections of the International among them. I mean, it's kind of like your modern day universities, where once upon a time, the universities were all about expanding knowledge and encouraging education and sending them off to create great things in society. That was the whole point, right? True acquisition of knowledge. But what happened when they opened it up and now everybody and their dog can come in and sign up at these universities? The standards are dropped, right? You got all this DEI and all this other stuff coming in that just changes it up. And then what happens? Not only did that happen with the student base in these universities, it happened amongst the academics, who are mostly coming from Marxist, or whether they'll admit it or not, totalitarian ideologies as their premise. And then they go off to educate the students in the universities about history, about the civilization that they find themselves in, about the country they find themselves in, and they start educating them with the Marxist playbook, which was just a very particular new hybrid breed of totalitarianism from the past. It had a way better PR. It had a pull towards your virtue this time, instead of a pull towards your malice. So it was like, it kind of went undetected, right? But make no mistake about it, Karl Marx didn't write this thing. He was a part of it, but he was just the patsy. He was just the front guy. Okay, the guy to go out and be the hero and be the guy, and he probably played a little role here and there, but he was a member of these Philadelphian Masonic lodges. Do you think Karl Marx is sitting up at the top of these things? The guy's a failure. He's not in life. He's not up in the top level of the cunning people that I'm talking about that were formulating this international. He's on their payroll. He's being guided and encouraged by them, the real string pullers. So it is precisely through these doors, these Masonic halls, that many students entered the international. Young people such as Charles Longueuil and Paul Lafargue, who later played a prominent part in the socialist movement. So he's saying they're groomed within the Masonic halls before they go out into the public sphere. But even for this period, one cannot speak of official Masonry as a factor in the formation of the international. Young people used the premises of the lodges for their political self-education, but they did not accept Masonic ideology. Their attitude towards Masonry was critical, to say the least. That's always struck me as interesting. And I've seen this confirmed in other writings as well. And again, also consider the time, okay? Because Masonic institutions of today are very different than they were in the timeline that we're talking about. And then if you go back even further, they're very different yet again. So we have to keep that context in mind. But that was always interesting to me. The students that are literally recruited into these Masonic halls at the time, they didn't even fall for all the symbolism and the old ancient Egyptian, Persian, druidic stuff that's been gleaned from history by these Masons. They didn't even really care about that shit. They were just like, yeah, whatever. They were hearing the new guys that were in these lodges, using the lodges as a place to foment revolution and socialism, really, totalism. That's what they were attracted to. So interesting dynamic that you don't really get from your average conspiracy researcher today. They don't really go deep on this. Very little nuance to be offered. He continues, official Masonry in France was never a factor in the formation and development of the First International. But in the France of the Second Empire, there existed not only the official Masonry recognized by the government, but also, here we go, wait for it, guys, an underground Masonic movement persecuted by the government because it sought the revolutionary overthrow of empire. Interesting. The role of these undercover government persecuted Masons in the forming and development of the First International was enormous. It has hardly been studied by historians, although quite a bit of relevant material has come to light. Some of the most interesting documents on the subject were preserved in the archives of Pierre Vesnier and published some 60 years ago by Marx Nettelau. Vesnier himself played only a minor role in the revolutionary Masonry now under discussion, joining a lodge for the first time in 1865. In recent years, some very important material on these revolutionary Masons has been published. And of course, we got all the sources. We now know the names of approximately 100 members of their principal lodges. These lodges operated in England, surprise, surprise, and brought together primarily, but not exclusively, French emigres, so French immigrants. These materials, together with the emigre publications of the period, make it possible for us to begin to understand the history of these Masons, the political activities of their leaders, and their relation to the First International. It is important to determine the nature of these groups, which, for the sake of brevity, we are calling revolutionary Masonry, which I think is appropriate. Now, outwardly, he says, these groups had the form of a Masonic organization and bore a Masonic name, the Lodge of the Philadelphians, and it was Loge des Philadelphies. Some of these members may in fact have considered themselves Masons, but veteran Masons, so he's talking about the old guys, way back, those who headed the lodges must have realized that their lodges had little in common with real Masonry. And it is at this point in that presentation that I read you the quotes from the Duke of Brunswick and some of the other royal aristocracy that were top-level Masons in their thing, but they were patriots to their country. They didn't want to see the overthrow of their country. And they saw there was something cooking in the bellies of these Masonic organizations to foment revolutionary totalism in the country. And they immediately were calling for an exorcism to be done within Masonry, or at least a disbandment or a quarantining effect, something to stop this from happening. It was spreading so quickly, they couldn't stop it. Interesting. It's a fascinating history. There's so much more to it, but again, we're just kind of giving you a little breakdown here. Now, here we go. This is what really caught my eye, and it still catches my eye, and is very relevant to what we're seeing happen right now. The Lodge of the Philadelphians, he says, was formerly part of an association that, at the beginning of the 1850s, bore the name of the Order of Memphis. Where was Memphis situated? The history of this order is obscure. It's occulted. It's a very old version of this order. Historians of Masonry do not accord it much attention or sympathy, and as a matter of fact, much of its history is contradictory and incomprehensible. And I would say that would be by design. An odd mixture of pseudo-Eastern mysticism and obvious leftist political sympathies on the part of the leaders of the order leaves a strange impression. When I first read that, I was like, oh my God, I was literally just listening to Michael Tsarian break this down on another show he did called Princes of Light, which is there's a 2-part series. There's an article on his website. You can read about it. There's a 2-part series where he's getting to the origin of Freemasonry. I have a quote from that article that's going to blow your mind later in this presentation. He was literally breaking, when I came across this, I'd just been recording an Unslaved episode with Michael where he was literally breaking this down. He just alluded to it. He didn't pull up anything on it specifically. He just alluded to it. And I went, right, Eastern mysticism mixing in with leftist ideologies, and that was the admixture, and that it goes back to this cult of Memphis, and that this goes back to the Setian Atenists in Egypt, and like you start seeing the connections, right? And yeah, they had the basic same philosophical premise as today's modern radical leftist or fascist or Nazi or radical Islamist or social. Like, it's the same. And we were talking about this, and then I came across this document, and then we got a guy from the time writing about it and basically vindicating. I was like, what? This is crucial information. The average person that's studying this, that you're listening to, you're not going to hear about this from Jordan Peterson. I'm sorry. As much as he does good on the surface level, you're not going to hear about this from some of your favorite top podcasters and academics. You're just not. Now, they do great work in other ways of exposing this, but you're not going to get to the root of it. You need to, there's maybe 5 people in the world that I could recommend you go to for this. That's how rare it is. That's how guarded it is. That's how afraid the average academic or podcaster is to really go down this road, which is really shocking, because if you did, you would answer a lot of the questions that you're sitting there humming and hawing about all the time. It's all answered if you go to the sources, right? So it always kind of blows me away that they never really go all the way with it, but I'm going to go all the way with it. An odd mixture of pseudo-Eastern mysticism and obvious leftist political sympathies on the part of the leaders of the order leaves a strange impression. Guys, that one sentence, just pick it up and run, dig. Go dig on that. Now he continues. As a rule, the left wing of Freemasonry tried to lead the movement away from mysticism in the name of rationalism and free thought, and insisted on simplification of the statutes because they wanted it to be more public. They didn't want to be so secret. The Philadelphians had a completely different outlook. So guys, think about this. He's telling us about a certain point in this Masonic history where you had the original left wing of Freemasonry, okay, which would have been a little more, it would have been more like your classic liberal, not your radical lefty of today. This is the type of Mason that your founding fathers of America were, by the way, okay? They want to move away from the mysticism in the name of rationalism and free thought and free societies, and insisted on simplifying the statutes because they didn't want this stuff held back from the public anymore. That was what the original left was fighting for, was declassification, enlightenment, right? They come from the Enlightenment era. But the Philadelphians had a completely different outlook. And of course, the Philadelphians were the lodge that produced the Karl Marxes of the world and produced the Communist Manifestos of the world, and also the ardent Fool Society members that later went on to form the Nazi Party that we're going to talk about. And you find out a lot of these guys are also connected to the Order of the Jesuits and all these things, right? So you go, okay, that's interesting. You have a new left moving in and pushing out the old left from the Masonic lodges who are trying to make it more public. And they go, no, 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 no. We got a whole new brand now, guys. And they went and led the young movements. This is the chapter. I didn't have the notes on it. This is the chapter where when you hear Michael Tsarian talking about the young movements, the young Turks, young Italy, young Ireland, right? What is that? Go research what those movements are. Those are communist movements to breed the young into communists, to foment revolution, to overthrow those countries. The head guy in Italy that started the Young Italy was none other than Giuseppe Mancini, who was in collusion with the groups that this gentleman is pointing out, the Philadelphians. He was one of their proteges. He took the mantle of the head of the Illuminati, the actual Illuminati, not the mystical one that's in the movies that everybody talks about the Illuminati. I'm talking about the historically verified Illuminati from Bavaria that existed and that was originally founded by Adam Weishaupt, who took the mantle. Giuseppe Mancini, who was he? An Italian revolutionary, far left Philadelphian. And didn't you find out that they got their fingers into the Middle Eastern region as well, into the Arab world, and started bringing that through there? So not only are they crashing through the dates of the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, and bringing this doctrine in, not only are they invading the basement level of Masonry and gutting it out and bringing it up to something else in around the 1700s or 1800s, they're gutting the whole thing. And they're rebuilding it because that's what you would do if you want to create a new international order based on this premise. You got to rout out everything that's in opposition to you, even if that means you got to attack your own side and rout out the people on your own side that just aren't playing ball with what you want to do at this next extreme level. So this friggin' slide alone, like take a screenshot of this slide, read it, and go dig, please. Just do yourself a favor, okay? It's huge. Like, here we go. Let's continue. The Philadelphians had a completely different outlook. He's saying, not only did they trace their forebears to ancient Egyptian priests and to the legendary Chaldean Magi who went to Bethlehem to pay tribute to the Christ child, but they preserved 96 grades of initiation and the post of Le Grand Hierophant, which is the Grand Hierophant, one of the cards of the tarot, at their head. At the same time, almost from the moment the Philadelphians appeared on the scene during the July Monarchy, they tended to draw support from left-wing, even extreme left-wing elements. And extreme left-wing elements is where we traditionally think of socialism being born from, right? The historian is faced with the paradox that whereas Jean-Etienne Marconi, founder of the head of the order, you're talking about Philadelphians, for many years, was utterly indifferent to politics. The Supreme Council of the Order for 1855 was composed entirely of Republicans and socialists who sat with the extreme left in the National Assembly of 1948 to 49. So guys, you're getting so much in this slide. You talk about the politics like, you're talking left and right. Yeah, they don't quite get what I'm talking about when I'm saying left and right. I'm talking about psychological categories. But, I think we all agree that when you look at politics, I mean, look at Canada right now. I mean, in the States, it's a little different because you have a totally new Republican Party being built right now. It's totally different than all of them. But in Canada and mostly around and most of America's history, you're going to say, yeah, what does Michael say? Tweedledum and Tweedledee, right? You got the left wing of the bird, you got the right wing of the bird, all controlled by the same brain, right? We've all heard that. It's pretty accurate. Aside from a few outliers, here and there. But when you see what's going on in Canada, my country, the political right is just making way for the left. That's their job. They don't fight them. They don't fight them tooth and claw. They don't go to war with the left here in Canada. They're like, meh. And then they walk away, and then the left just goes boof. And then they just go, look, I tried to fight for you guys. It was the best I could do. And then you realize, wait a minute, while you were doing your mock battle with the left, who was just like selling all of our country out, right? You actually opened the door for them. You actually signed off on a lot of the bills in Parliament. You actually voted for them. You actually have promoted people in your own party that are card-carrying Marxists. How is that conservative? Globalists working for the international. How is that conservative? What are you conserving? You're conserving nothing. You're conserving nothing. We're just trying to hope you can conserve freedom. Like if we could conserve freedom for all the people that get triggered at the word conservative, it just means to conserve. And we're trying to figure out, it used to be that you'd have a rational right and a rational left, thought a little differently, and would negotiate the terms of how much are we going to conserve, how much are we going to move on towards the future and change the order of things, where are we going to put those borderlines, where are we going to do things with the economy, are we conserving the family, or are we just getting rid of that? Are we conserving Judeo-Christian values or the philosophical values of Western civilization? Are we conserving those? No. Oh, okay. So are we conserving our social and cultural identity? Oh, no, we're not conserving that. Are we conserving fiscally our money that we pay the government and that they just give to all these other countries and fund a lot of bullshit that put us more and more in debt and cause hyperinflation? Oh, guess we're not really doing that. Nobody's really fighting it. I mean, you're fighting it with a lot of rhetoric, but you're not like actually stopping this immovable object that is hurtling towards us as Canadians. And so therefore my conclusion is that what I'm reading about what was going on in the 1800s in the halls of masonry is what's happening in the political parliaments right now. The same thing. You guys are all a bunch of secret handshaking assholes is what you are. Or you're idiots. One of the two. And both are bad. But I'm just here to show you guys there's a history of this. There's a precedent for this. It's not new. This is the order of the world. So take this, please. Take this slide and keep sharing it and keep looking at it and keep studying it. We're almost done here. We are not concerned, he goes on, with explaining these contradictions. He's like, yeah, it would take me forever. But there is no doubt that after 1848, in any case, the Lodge of the Philadelphians and all organizations related to it, especially those in London, England, brought together exclusively leftist elements and that all their activity was leftist in direction. They did not maintain organizational ties with official Masonry either in France or in England. Among the English Masons, there was a small and uninfluential radical wing, but it was dedicated primarily to anti-religious propaganda. The organs of this group were the Free Thinker, the Reasoner, and the National Reformer. And with this group, the Philadelphians soon established intimate ties, but official English Freemasonry never recognized the Philadelphians, and its publications maintained that they were not Masons, but an ordinary secret society with revolutionary goals. So they didn't even want to the Masons at the time were like, we don't even want to pretend that we're in any way affiliated with you. That's how odious you are. Now, this is a couple quotes from an amazing article about, and I went through it in detail, word by word, line by line, on my Occult History of Communism presentation on my Substack. You can go watch more on that. But let me just get into this one. Secret societies provided the organizational basis for revolutionary groups. Just start there. Just start there. The American scholar J.H. Billington, guys, go please read his book, Fire in the Minds of Men. In his study on revolutionary as a faith, meaning like a cult belief, an ideology, states that so great was the impact of Freemasonry in the revolutionary era that some understanding of the Masonic milieu seems the essential starting point for any serious inquiry into the occult roots of the revolutionary tradition. And the reason I called this the occult roots of totalitarianism is because the revolutionary tradition ends up causing a revolution that leads to totalitarianism. So that's why, just so we understand that. Felipe Bironati, a character you definitely need to become familiar with, my friends. The Italian exponent of the French Revolution. Yeah, you might want to look into that one. was initiated into Masonry in 1786. In 1808, he formed Les Sublimes Maîtres Parfaits, like the Order of the Illuminati, grafted on to Freemasonry in 1776. Within this was an inner circle organized to realize political aims. Dr. J.M. Roberts believes Buonarroti might have joined an Illuminati-influenced lodge in 1786. The plot thickens. Now, this is from Dr. J.M. Roberts on the Mythology of Secret Societies back in 1972. What may be termed the first international political secret society, the Sublime Maîtres Parfaits, was founded by Buonarroti, perhaps in 1808. Only Freemasons were admitted to it. The elect were aware that they were to work for a republican form of government. Only the Erophites knew that the final aim of the society was social egalitarianism and the means to do to it the abolition of private property. So basically, that was this is it. Social egalitarianism and the abolition of private property. This is Marxism. This is also fascism. For those of you who say, no, fascism was different. In Italy and Germany, the fascists allowed you to have private property. Like, okay, they did allow you to have some private property, but was the final say about what was to be done with that private property in the hands of the individual that owned it, or was it in the hands of the regime that controlled it? And we're going to find out just how collectivistic the fascists were. So I don't want to hear this bullshit anymore about how communists were the ones that went after private property and that, oh, but the fascists, they were superior somehow, some way. This is what the woke right wants you to believe. Because they had Christian values and because they were trying to preserve their culture and because they didn't try to abolish private property. Yeah, but they were just smarter, guys. They didn't write it out the way the communists were like, yeah, we just want to do that. They were just smarter because guess what? The communists were appealing to the working class and lower. And the fascists needed to appeal to the middle class and the upper class. So their arguments had to be more refined. And that explains the competition between the communists and the fascists in the 20th century. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the premise of their ideology, which is identical. And when you know that, so many more things can make sense for you. If you don't know that, you're frozen in the mud moving forward into all the research you're going to do on that timeline, on this timeline, and on our present timeline. Sad to say. It's just so crucial to understand that. So take it from these guys. Now, where are we going next here? Okay, this is it. We'll go this quick. Marx's Lodge. Dr. Bob James draws similar conclusions to that of Nikolevsky, who we just read from a few minutes ago, and Laus, who is another scholar that came out about it, regarding Freemasonry and the rise of socialism. They say it's neither accidental nor an aberration that reforms Garibaldi, Mazzini, Charles Bradlaugh, and Karl Marx, who were all Freemasons, as were many labor movement people in Australia. James identifies the associations between the First International and the lodge of which Marx was an initiate, along with other influential revolutionists. Citing O'York on the secret history of the First International, James writes, the WMA, Industrial Working Men's Association, in Geneva, Switzerland, sought and found a temple worthy of their cult, a Masonic temple, which they, Marx et al., rented. They put the name of Temple on their cards and bills. Did anybody know this about that, Marx? No? Bradlaugh acknowledges having been initiated into the Lodge de Philadelphian Lodge, which is believed to have been Marx's lodge. His brothers, including Blanc, Garibaldi, and Mazzini. Founded in London in 1850, its initial members were immigrants from recognized foreign orders, which perceived Freemasonry as, quote, an institution essentially philanthropical, philosophical, and progressive. There's that word progressive. And there is a good progressive and a very bad one, my friends. It's important to differentiate between the two. It has for its objects the amelioration of mankind without any distinction of class, color, or opinion, either philosophical, political, or religious, for its unchangeable motto, liberty, equality, fraternity. That is the propaganda that your children are being taught right now in public school, in university, on the internet. That is it. That is the point. And doesn't it sound so lovely when you read it? Like all good propaganda does? Oh, it's an institution essentially philanthropical. Ooh, they invest in things. That's really good. They're philosophical and progressive. Wow, that's brilliant. I love progressive philosophy. It's got for its objects, meaning its agenda, that it's hiding in secret over hundreds of years, if not longer, the amelioration of mankind. Basically, we're just going. It's collectivism, guys. That's what it is. Without any distinction of class. What do you think that means? We're going to equalize everybody, even though nature doesn't equalize anything. We're going to violate the law of nature, and we're going to make of mankind no distinction of class, color, opinion. So not even opinion. That's why, guys, this was the old agenda. That's why they're saying words are violence today, the left and the woke right. They're just not going to admit that that's what they're saying, but that's what they're saying. They're saying words are violence. Opinions are violence. This is what the video and the gentleman was bringing up, was talking about how totalitarianism and collectivism operate. Where did they learn it? Where did they get the script? I'm reading from the script writers to you. And this is just what's publicly available. Imagine what isn't. We're going to eliminate all differences in mankind. When you read the Illuminati letters between Spartacus and whatever the fuck the other guy's code name was, which is just, what's his name? Spartacus was the code name for Weishaupt. And he's talking to some of these dudes in the Philadelphian Lodge. And they have letters that they wrote back and forth. Did you know? Did you read any of them? Most of them weren't even translated. So you need to translate a lot of them from German, right? So, once they're translated and you understand what they're talking about, they're literally saying, we're going to do this. This is what we need to do. Liberty, equity, fraternity, which is now the modern day slogan of what we call the radical left in the West. Nothing new about it. Didn't originate with Marx, did it? He was a part of what? A bigger lodge called the Philadelphians, who were brought in by who and sponsored by who? The black nobility aristocracy of Europe, who brought in and smuggled in to the West, to the traditions of the West, to the churches of the West, to the Masonic halls of the West, pseudo-Eastern mysticism. Now you can start to open up the chapters on the collusion between the Templars and the Silesian pirates, the Templars and the royal house in Saudi Arabia, in Jerusalem, in the Middle East, in Islam, in the Moorish empires, right? The Turks, the Ottomans. There was collusion because of the premise that was similar. So you won't understand what happened in that 20th century and what's happening now unless we go back to the origin of where it all came from. And you won't understand your average, what we call leftist today, which is not the original understanding of left and right politically, of which both sides had a function. One was the more masculine voice, one was the more feminine voice. Our society was built on the premise that we should find a way to debate the difference of thought between these two types of psyches, the masculine dominant psyche and the feminine dominant psyche, and that transcends gender or sex, by the way. And we need to have a way where we can have public discourse to debate it out and figure out how much progressivism do we want? How much of removing of borders do we want? How much do we want to keep borders? What are we protecting and conserving versus what are we throwing away? Like, there was a very practical purpose to why Western civilization adopted the two-party system originally. And you're not going to get nuance about that from any of the modern day conspiracy guys who just repeat that one bit. They fast forward through the movie and just give you the end quote of, oh, it's the same bird controlling the two wings. Yes, but there's a lot more to it. You're missing the history of how it became that way from its original. Remember Tolkien's quote, guys. Just keep it as a mantra in your head. I should have put it in the slide. I'll do my best to not butcher it. Where he's saying, Evil can't create an evil person, a person that is inspired by the death instinct versus the life instinct, just to keep it very simple. A destroyer versus a creator, okay? An evil person cannot create anything of his own. He must steal and plunder the works of good men and repackage it back to you to sell you his evil agenda. He has no creativity. He has no creativity because he doesn't possess empathy. In order to have creativity, you must be able to empathize with other human beings and your environment from which you're going to be creating something from. So minus empathy, you lose creativity. Now you're on the dark side of the force and you're only ruled and dominated by your emotions. You have no logic anymore. You have no reason because that's atrophied within you because you've got that burning rage. Like when Anakin Skywalker is talking to Yoda and Yoda looks at him and he's like, I sense much fear in you. I sense much fear in you. Fear is the path to the dark side, he says. Fear makes you think emotionally. The fire in the minds. We need revolution. We need to overthrow this. We got to burn the whole thing down. We got to stand on the X. We got to report our neighbors. We got to call the cops. Down with anybody advocating for free speech. We got to shoot Charlie Kirk. It's fully justified. He's out there hurting people's feelings. Just like this genocide of hurt feelings must end. And instead of resolving that myself, I'm going to go out and just take out everybody that's triggering me. Do you see how quickly you can get into the dark side? Do you see how easy it is to actually sell the dark side? Just to use that metaphor, it's just so good. The dark side is just so much easier to sell because it's the free ticket out. It's the pass the personal responsibility buck, which is what this has always been about. It's not about equality. It's about getting rid of the people that you feel threatened by because you couldn't find the courage and the strength within yourself to achieve what the greats did. You didn't invent anything. You didn't create anything new. You borrowed from everybody else, butchered it, repackaged it, pretend it was yours, copywrote it. You're a thief. Evil is a thief. And it runs off fear, which is a thief of reason. You see how this works? Crucial. Bradlaugh acknowledges having been initiated into the Lodge des Philadelphies, which is believed to have been Marx's lodge. His brothers, including Blanc, Garibaldi, and Mazzini, founded in London in 1850. He defines Freemasonry as an institution essentially philanthropical, philosophical, and progressive. It has for its objects the amelioration of mankind without any distinction of class, color, or opinion. So enter the gray world, either philosophical, political, or religious, for its unchangeable motto, liberty, equity, fraternity. That is the recipe of totalism. I don't care. Left, right, up, down, in the middle, on the left, gray. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You're getting hit with that from all sides. That is how you identify it. That's how you learn. That's the rat I keep saying I'm smelling. That's the smoke I keep saying I'm seeing coming out of the trees. And the fire was born in these secret occult societies. Nothing new. And we could go through history and see this same movie being replayed. And it's because it's a maturation process. It's a maturation problem with the human psyche. We're not quite mature enough yet to see through it. A few geniuses have blessed us with their thinking and took the slings and arrows that it took to bring the information to people. And most of them are burned to the stake, imprisoned, incarcerated, forgotten, lost to history. Nobody ever read them. And yet here we are. We're here because of the people we read, because of the ideas we chomped down on at the expense of the ones we should have chomped down on. I'm talking about us in the West now and our current plight. We listened to the priesthoods. We listened to these mofos who crawled out of the secret society world and infiltrated for hundreds of years all of your institutions and started raising the next generations. Enter Yuri Bezmenov. And now you understand. Just as prevalent on the left as the right, but it's the same ideology. So now you can distinguish between it a little bit better, I think. What do we got next here? I got more to go. And yeah. Oh, here's the one. Okay. This is from Michael Tessarian's article, Princes of Light. You have to go to michaeltessarian.com, go to articles. It's up close to the top. Type in Princes of Light, and there you go. This quote opens the article. Freemasonry is labyrinthine. It is full of puzzles, conundrums, misspellings, corruptions, cryptic clues, and simple salutes, childish codes, contrivances, circular paths, road that sometimes leads nowhere, walls appearing to be 10 feet thick, yet giving way easily to the slightest touch in the right spot, riddles to be solved, numerous passwords, an allegorical, highly symbolical, double entendre storyline worthy of the best latter-day spy writers, protected by secret signs and symbols and a myriad of enigmas to be confronted. In the labyrinth that is Freemasonry, there is a center where rests its holy grail. Many have tried to find it only to reach dead ends. And that's from Leon Davin, The Ritual, the Greatest Story Never Told. An absolute must-have on your bookshelf. I hope you guys are helping me share this episode out. If you're getting any value, help me get some more eyes on this, guys. Thank you so much. Now, okay, before we go to this one, this is my cue. Speaking of Michael Tessarian, we are now going to leave the study of more of what you've probably been hearing a lot of, communism, socialism, and we're going to move into what happened with the Nazi experiment and the occult roots of that side that none of your woke right buds are going to tell you about. This man will. So strap yourselves in. I'll be back in 5 minutes and we'll talk about it. Here we go.
But let's, as to their nature, let's go to their own words. This is a key thing to do. From Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda of the Nazis, he says, our struggle against Bolshevism is not a struggle against, but on the contrary, for socialism. What did I just say? A struggle inspired by the deep conviction that true socialism can only be realized if the most vulgar and most compromising offspring of socialism is first eliminated. And he and others went on about this. So, wait a minute, we haven't even caught up in the world today to realize they are socialistic. No, they were fascists. Define that, please. Well, that's where I'm off, mate. I can't. Fascism is the type of socialism that interests the middle class and is targeted to the middle class and maybe even higher up the ladder than that. Communism is custom made for the working class who don't like anybody above their own station. So it has to have so socialism has to been broken up into different we haven't even got that yet outside of Unslaved and the people we've dealt with and your great writers that we try to feature here. The general world hasn't twigged this at all. And that's why they're in a mess. So what is Goebbels talking about here? One of the lead Nazi ideologists? Revised socialism. The Bolshevik thing doesn't look like it's working. We're going to fight to the death to get it to work. We want it to be plain. We want it to be simple. We want it to be direct. And we have a challenge. Yes, the working class always accept the socialism in the lowest brow form. But our challenge is to see if we can get socialism to be accepted by even up to the level of industrialists, the great philanthropists, the artists, the middle class, the housewife. So that means that we've been had in the 20th century because these points we're making right now have not even been pointed out in the mainstream. And even in the non-mainstream, they've hardly been pointed out. Think of the way that Nazism is normally portrayed in the media and described. And my goodness, even in a program like this, how could we ever move ahead unless this is completely computed? Together with the fact that all socialistic paradigms are being renovated, even the ones in Ireland, as we said, they jumped all over the place. It looked all, straightforward to numbskulls. But the secret societies themselves, Sinn Féin, IRA, they were moving goalposts all the time to find the right setting. It's not even a bad thing. It's a necessary thing as you find out the paradigm that suits everybody, all and sundry. Well, in Nazi Germany, it was the same. Socialism as an entity is not one entity. It's a model, and it's always being revised. They have their system. The other guys down the street have their system. Eventually, they're like gangs. They'll kick the ass of each other, and you'll only see what will happen after a period of time. Who comes out the stronger? And the one that does will be the one who rakes it all in. So what this means is that socialists are the true fascists. Didn't 2020 teach us that? I mean, there's no conversation until that has been completely computed. But when it comes to Goebbels himself, the man we've just read from, there's actually rumors that he was Jewish himself. His wife was Jewish. He was an author. He had written several novels. Very cosmopolitan. If you've read his novels and knew about him before he joined the Nazi Party, you would never, ever think of this man as some sort of fascist or ultra-conservative. He used to be called, his nickname in school was Rabbi. So at the very least, we can agree he's a Sabbatean. But let's go to the next one. There's another extraordinary quote. Heartwarming words. A time of brutality approaches, of which we ourselves can have absolutely no conception. Indeed, we are already in the middle of it. We shall only reach our goal if we have enough courage to destroy, laughingly to shatter what we once held holy, such as tradition, upbringing, friendship, and human love. Does that sound familiar? Well, he's saying it outright. There's no prevarication. There's no Cote is trying to blindside you. This is straight up. There's going to be hell to pay. We're going to bring down chaos upon your heads for our agenda, which is to wipe away all traditions. Does that sound like a conservative to you? I mean, why have we been so incredibly thick with this? They're not conservatives.
Well, there you go. They're not conservatives. They're just competing over the same territory. And yes, it crept into Judaism and the Jewish community just as much, though, as it crept into Christianity. You can go look up something called Christian socialism and Christian communism. You can go look up how it affected Buddhism. The ideology got mixed in, actually came from the religious ideology into the political world. That's usually where the stuff comes from. It doesn't just come out of a vacuum. Even though it's such an interesting thing where the communists would say, we're abolishing, and the Illuminati say, we're abolishing religion. No, you're abolishing competition. You're creating a new religion. You're creating a new cult. That's what you're doing. It's what they're all saying. All these totalitarians, all the other cults and religions are wrong and ours is the right one. And then people go, yeah, we like that, because it gets us all together as a collective. We get to have a thing to fight for and believe in and surround ourselves with, because, you know, you're prompting and triggering our primal tribalistic instincts. We like that. And so we latch onto it. No thought required. No research, no introspection, no study of any kind. You just bite into it because it sounds good. I don't even know why I like the sound of it. I just do, right? And as anti-psychological society, right? And then it slowly moves from there to, well, we do have this problem with other ideas out there. And the only way we can deal with this, and different types of people that believe different kinds of things, the only way we can deal with this is to eliminate the competition, guys. That's where we got to go next, and enter in the fire in the minds of men, the revolutionary faith. History just keeps repeating itself like a broken record. Now, what he's saying there, also, Michael's bringing up the fact that there might be some of these Jews that are infected with this virus of socialism, which is clear. There's socialist parties in Israel. There's socialism that crept up within Judaism, especially post-World War II. And you can start to understand why when you realize that this group of people has had to collectivize together for its very survival since day one, all through the programs and everything else. So you can kind of understand the easy sales pitch that the black nobility had to bring in certain influential Jewish rabbis or whatever into the mix, or some of the secular Jews that came into the mix as well, you know? And you can see that. And there's nothing wrong with realizing, oh, wow, yeah, it's the same contamination that I've described that infected Freemasonry, that has infected all the other religions as well. that is now basically our mainstream politics. Yep, it probably got into Judaism also. There's nothing anti-Semitic or collectivistic in your accusation to look at that, because now you're looking at it as a human thing. And this is what separates you. If you take that position I've just given you, when you're critiquing various people that are espousing these ideas, now you're talking from a human perspective again. You're not in to the collective blame game of those who are espousing this as some kind of group phenomena that only comes from one race of people. You're now realizing this is a poison, this is a chemical cocktail that was created like a biological weapon. Like that's what an ideological package is. A cult ideological package is akin to a homemade bomb, a tailor-made weapon for war, but cast into the minds of the populace, which can be more deadly than some of the biggest bombs you've got, because it lasts time. It doesn't just kill people one time, like that one bomb that hits Hiroshima kills people one time. It's a continual bomb that just keeps going off and has millions of skulls crushed underneath its boots historically. Different names, different groups of people, everybody's tried it or a variation of it. And so that's why when I see people singling out Jews or the nation of Israel or the Americans, I start thinking, wait, I'm sitting here as a white man living in Canada, being accused of being a colonizer, KKK, Nazi, racist, fascist, simply for advocating for free speech and bodily autonomy and all these things, right? And I've been blamed for every evil that has ever affected every other group of person in my country. I am the number one pariah that everybody from all the other nations that are immigrating here, not everybody, but in general, this is what we're seeing, right? All the whining and complaining is geared towards, oh, white, straight male, you're to be torn down. You are the evil just by the fact that you possess those physical characteristics. That's the evil. The physical characteristics are where the evil is. That's the argument. It's racism. And racism is the dumbest ideology to ever exist. It's for dumb people that want to abnegate personal responsibility and not take the time to look deeper beyond the surface and realize, wait a minute, this is a psychological problem. This is a poison package that has an ideology. It's a payload, it's a weapons payload that can be installed in anybody's brain and then have them acting like puppets under a spell. It's witchcraft built and designed by the very best. And the very best that designed this weapon, this payload, they don't come from any of the public houses that you're talking about. They don't come from any of the traditional groups and civilizations or nations that you think. These people are beyond that. Breakaway civilization, their own private worship and religion, something you've never heard of before. You probably can't even pronounce the names of half the things these people believe in. And they show up wearing the costume of every group that they hide behind. In the Vatican, they pretend to be Christians. In the Protestant houses, they pretend to be Christians. I'm not going to go so far as to just throw the whole Christianity out, because there's great things in there too. There's a cultural utility for it. There's a beautiful tradition buried within it, an esoteric tradition that I've also labored on my channels to try to bring out, to say, hey, if the world would have chomped down on this version, and if all the religions would have looked into their origins and saw the same kind of things, we wouldn't have the wars. We wouldn't have the problems. Right? But no, we bite down on the surface level. So, and that's where I come in and just go, hold on, let me blow the whistle here. You guys thinking that it's this group or that group, you're friggin' wrong. You don't know. You just haven't put the time. That's my opinion. Superficial level, yellow belt level. We can do better than this. Go to the original guys. Realize that evil is a phenomena that exists within the human mind. And that is where it needs to be fought. And it goes right down to the individual. Therefore, collectivistic solutions to humanity's problems are not what the doctor ordered. It will not work. I don't care how much of the rhetoric sounds great. I don't care if you go to the Socialist International Wikipedia page and read about how UN chief Antonio Gutierrez was the founding member, and then he went to lead the UN, which is basically just acting that agenda out on the world stage and losing more and more credibility by the day by doing so. But you go read that page. You go read the history on these websites. You go read the history on the Red Cross or any of these organizations that they sound so caring and loving. And then you find out when you look at the history, it's just nothing like that. The proof is in the pudding, not in what you said the pudding was going to be made out of. That's just not good enough for someone like me. I need to see, okay, what's the track record in history of your ideas being applied at a social scale? Oh, genocide, murder, destruction, the death of freedom, and the death of the individual. Oh, okay, I want nothing to do with it. Any variation of it. So it's funny that I got to come on here and convince people to equally despise communism, socialism, and fascism, and Nazism. See, depending on where you're coming from, you might favor one over the other. And you've never been shown that it's the same ideology, let alone being shown why you love it. It wasn't crafted. None of these ideologies were crafted over these years to come out in the open and go, guys, we are basically just the political party of totalitarian, dystopic rule and the death of all of our enemies and the death of your society and the death of freedom, dressed up in a bunch of wordplay and wordsmithing and myth. They're not going to say it, but they will, because of how we know on psychology that there's this thing that humans do, which is project. This is a weapon on our side when you analyze it, especially when you're dealing with evil, because evil also possesses a bottomless pit of arrogance and narcissism. And it is this that is the seed of destruction that is contained within the force of evil in the human mind. It's the arrogance. And it's the fact that they have this arrogance that leads them to be so vocal about what they believe, that even the guys that are sworn through all the Masonic handshakes to keep their mouths shut can't resist telling you in one way or another. It might be a little hint over here. It might be a little book over here. H.G. Wells, The Open Conspiracy, might be a little speech or a little symbolic display at a Super Bowl halftime show to show you the symbolic connections and the affiliations. It might be a movie that comes out. It might be a political speech. It might be a lot of things. They can't resist. So evil can't build anything of its own. It's got to steal and warp and maim the works of good men and then sell it back to you with the poison pill installed. And it's got no creativity and no empathy. And it's got no real end game. It never really thinks itself through to the end. It just wants what it wants right now. And it just goes for it. Collateral damage, who cares? And then you have the other element of it, which is that what we're revealing here is there's an internal lie that the adherents of this ideology are telling themselves, that they are then spreading like a virus to other people. And they're using virtue as the weapon. So they're using your virtues to get you to bite down on it. And then the fact that they're very good at wearing the sheep's clothing. Right? So now that you know this, now go research what's going on. Now go down the rabbit holes. Learn the rhetoric, and then tell me where you spot it. And it's going to shock you where you spot it. Up is down, left is right, right? It's backwards inversion world. The good guys aren't the good guys. The bad guys aren't the bad guys. It's flip-flop. We've been lied to. That's what you're going to find. So I want to draw your attention to this absolutely crucial unslaved presentation. Go to Substack or go to unslaved.com. Sign up. Just spend a month in there. You can sign up for a month and then cancel anytime you want. At least go and watch this whole video start to finish, and then go to the sources that he brings up for you. It will fix a lot of the tangled web of lies that have been put in your mind, because he's not just, see, this is the other thing. He's in this presentation, and this is not how we roll on Enslaved, just giving opinions. The receipts are there too. And it's more receipts than you've got time for. That's what I like about it. We're not just saying things out of our ass here. I'm not just saying shit. I'm giving you the sources. That's how you win this battle. That's how you win the information war. Not just resharing a video made by someone else about a subject you don't really understand and then making that your concrete opinion. Real research means you put the time in. Don't forget that, please. It's very important. Now, this is where we're going to get into certain things that are happening right now that a lot of you are wondering, where'd Dave get off the wagon here? Why are we going after Palestine and Islam, and what's going on with this and supporting Jews? And, you're confused because you're too used to listening to the same old trope, the same old storyline from all the mainstream alternative people. I've got no dog in this fight other than I just want to know the truth. And I'm trying to understand this bigger conspiracy that I've been watching for about 20 years of my life and putting that time in. And are you surprised that when you really go deep, you're going to have a different perspective on things? But if you just stay superficial level, you're not going to move an inch. I've seen a lot of guys in this movement that they're still spouting the same things, the same talking points, the same arguments that they did 15, 20 years ago, and they haven't upgraded it or added more to it, or maybe even changed completely. And when someone like me makes changes or makes adjustments in my thinking, I'm always accused of some kind of evil. It's never the accusation of, oh, well, that's the mark of somebody that's trying to educate himself. When you learn more, you adapt with the knowledge that you get, which is true, honest research. And instead of wasting time calling me names or attacking me, I don't care. I could give a shit. Spend your time validating your position. Spend your time doing the research. That's where you need to spend your time. The very fact that you've got time to sit there and cast a bunch of shit, it tells me you're wasting your time and you're not actually spending the time doing what you need to do. And I might even be wrong. That's the beautiful thing about this. I might be wrong about certain things. Maybe you agree with me on some things, don't agree on others. We're all kind of going down our own little algorithmically charged rabbit holes here to some degree. I personally favor going to actual books and libraries and, microfilm and stuff like that. But hey, whatever. Use a lot of modern tools that'll make this easier as well. But we actually need people with different opinions because we're trying to figure out a puzzle, a mystery here, and no mind can hold it all in one place at once, right? So I'm just asking, take a look, go through the archive, check the receipts, check them twice, go do your own research, and spend your time shooting arrows in the right direction at the enemy of freedom. Shoot your arrows in that direction. Don't turn around and shoot people in your own ranks. That's just my humble request. But before we go into this, I started wondering, what really got me curious was the history of the Middle Eastern region that I had never known. Now, I've done this in other areas. I've been on a few shows talking about it. This is in no way a deep dive on this in this show. I'm just going to touch on a little bit of it. I can do more on it if you want, but most of this research I don't even want to put out because I just feel like it's a waste. But to give you a little synopsis, I was wondering why, as I'm taking notes and doing what a lot of these scholars had encouraged, which is look for the patterns, the recurring patterns in the rhetoric, in the actions, in the history, in the names, in the symbols, etc. Okay, I'll do that. Go start doing it. I start doing a whole, I don't know how many years I did a research project on cults in the West, specifically Western cults and modern, Jim Jones, Manson, Heaven's Gate, all of them, right? And just going, oh, I'm looking at the patterns in the cults. And then I go, well, I wonder if I'm going to see the same dynamics and hear the same kind of rhetoric and see the same psychological reactions to that rhetoric if I apply this to politics and I go study the totalitarian regimes. And then I go on that path. Okay, let's go. And you'll see in my Cults of Death and Power series, which is, I think, very strong. It's another great one I put up on my Substack. I give you the collection of patterns that I've noticed in the writings, the actions, the behaviors, the outcomes, the words, of cults, politics, totalitarian regimes. Then I start swinging back over to my research into ancient religions, the origins of these religions. What I didn't realize for the longest time until I did the work was that what you think of today as name a religion, it's not at all today what it was then. There are elements of it for sure that never go away, but it's been changed so much due to the feuding, the internal feuding and debates and translational errors and all the things in all these different schools that have morphed and changed it over time. Just like I was saying, how those podcasters out there get morphed and changed by their audience. I was actually hinting at a dynamic that I did notice as a pattern, which is that, let's say you take Jim Jones as a cult, Jonestown, had everybody drink the Kool-Aid, famous example. There's many that aren't famous that are very much the same, but anyways, he's a good one to start with. And I noticed that the sad tale of Jim Jones and his cult, which led to him causing over 1,000 members of his cult to kill themselves together, including their children. Like, they're giving this stuff to their children and watching them die, and it was horrible. What leads people to do that? Was it all Jim Jones? Can we just blame it all on him? There's definitely a proportion of blame we could ascribe to Jim Jones, for sure, but he wouldn't have had a single member of his freaky deaky church that was built on the premise of socialism. That's from his words, by the way. He called himself the Black Raven of socialism. Did you know that? He was also, over time, moved and persuaded by his followers as well. So he is a partial creation of the fellowship, as much as the fellowship is a creation of him. This is the thing you're not going to get when you read modern cult books and all that. It's always blaming the guy. Oh, the guy or the cult leader. Mao's China was not just about Mao Zedong bringing occult doctrine to the masses and blinding them with the light. That was definitely part of it. It was also the fact that everybody was fanatically obsessed with it and loved it and worshiped him like a god. North Korea, worship him like a god. Total incubated little experiment going on over there in North Korea. We barely even know it all. Can't even get the cameras in enough to get the whole story. So I went, let's look again at the religion. We have this threat that is a threat hitting the West. I think it's a greater threat than what people in the conspiracy movement are thinking they're getting from Judaism or even Christianity or even socialism. Like, I think there's something from the Middle Eastern region that was baked over a long period of time, that was created to become not a religion, but a political revolutionary movement based on the doctrine of the Illuminati. If you're like, well, that sounds a bit exaggerated, listen to what I've been reading to you. And then go study the basic precepts of Islam. And come back and tell me I'm crazy. And then go look at the behavior of this religious group, which is beyond just religious. It's a political movement. It's a totalist movement. You study the history of these caliphates. You study the history of the ideas, 1,400 years of conquest colonization, inquisition, forced conversions, the idea of dimitude, which means that's the other option you get if you don't convert and or get killed. You can become a slave that owes a tax to the caliphate, right? It's built like a cult, like all religions. Now, am I saying all Muslims believe this? Well, I'm kind of curious where all the Muslims are that are calling this out. But no, not all Muslims practice it to the letter. If you practiced it to the letter, you'd be in the cult. You'd be jihadist. It's in the text. It's in the writings. It's in the blood. It's in the culture of that religion. Is this a racial argument? No. It's an ideological possession argument. Can I take the same critiques to other religions as in Western religions? Yes. Can we compare them the exact same? No. There are differences. Some of the main ones are, at the very least, Judaism and Christianity evolved out of the Stone Age through the Reformation, through the Enlightenment period, through the influence, through the pressure cooker, through some of the positive influence that can come from the people to say, hey, we're sick of boiling people in oil and doing inquisitions and having a theocracy. Let's have freedom. Let's do the Magna Carta. Let's have freedom, right? We upgraded. Let's keep the good parts of Christianity, because there's many. There's good parts in Islam. There's good parts, you know what I mean? Like I'm not a person that's all about cut and dry, black and white. But I do have to say this to the people that feel like, no, it's Israel and Jews that are the threat. Over that cult is more threatening to the West than Islam is. I think you need to get your head examined. I think you need to do some introspection. I'm sorry if that's harsh. I just feel that. And I'm saying that from a place of someone that felt the same way until I researched it, until I started to look at what was happening to my own country and others. Until I started talking to people who lived in Islam under Islamic rule. And I'm talking about especially the jihadist variety of it. That you could say, yeah, it was helped to be funded and what by Western American, blah, blah, blah. But that's the thing. This wasn't invented under George Bush, this ideology that we're seeing, the revolutionary ideology, the same poison pill that has infected Western universities and the left infected Islam. Is that a big surprise? Do you think that happened just after a couple bombing runs by the Americans or the British? Of course, the victim ideologues would like you to believe that. But it's 1,400 years of a precedence that we can look at and study. And then you talk to what are called apostates. Apostates. That's a word that exists. Go look it up. What does it mean? People who left Islam and then are accused by their own people of being traitors. In the same way that if you tried to leave any cult, you would be branded as a traitor. And then you get fatwas put on your head and people are coming after you, right? Because you betrayed the brotherhood. It's a human thing. This is not unique to Islam. This is human tribalism, okay? It's just the way it goes. There's just a particularly unique blending and package that was cultivated in the Middle East. And guess what? It's not only made up of Abrahamic religions or ancient doctrines coming from the Middle East. It's got an admixture of Nazism in it. And you wouldn't know that if I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go and actually look again at that history and get as much prime source material on it as I possibly could, including testimony from people who were there, people who've lived under it, people who identified it, people that are going through the region as we speak and finding in a lot of these houses Nazi propaganda, right? Who put that there? So in this sense, this is a way that the Islamic world or the Arabic world was victimized by the high table that sits well above them. They don't realize they're being used as an army for the people at the high table that sit behind the lodge doors. You want to know why there's a relationship and a bunch of handshaking going on between the left and what we call radical Islam? You won't understand that history if you take on board the fact that you thought Nazism and fascism was what we call right-wing and conservative. By its very nature, it could not be that. Most people don't even know what true conservatism is. I'm not even saying I'm wholly on board with just pure raw conservatism. I'm a nuanced person. I used to be more of a center right or even a classical liberal kind of person until I got into this and realized the political world of today is so chaotic. I can't even sit with any side right now. I got to look at this from the perspective of morality and facts and going to a different level, more philosophical, right? But if you really want to learn about it, you wouldn't have known because no one's teaching you this history. But it's there, it's documented. You can go look it up. You can hear this from people who lived it. So people are not understanding what's happening, and they're not understanding the alliances that were made both in ancient times. So we got to understand both the alliances that were made and the feuds that have been going on, the ancient feuds that have split the world. This is the story you were not taught. This is the story that is known in the Freemasonic world that they're not going to tell you about because it's secret, right? And they've got their own agenda to care to. But I'm not, again, not every Mason. I'm talking about the top guys, okay? High table, compartmentalization, okay? Don't come at me with this accusation. I'm trying to be as nuanced as I can because I look at everybody as an individual. I look at every human being. I don't care what race, gender, this, that. I don't care. I really don't. Are you moral? Are you aware of the predator that we're talking about? Are you aware of the poison pill ideological weaponized package that has been crafted and tailored specifically for each group, each demographic to bite down on, to bring everybody into this one ring for many necks world? That's really all that matters. I don't care, most of the other political arguments. I have no ill will against anybody of any race or faith or anything like that. If you're a moral person and you say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a Muslim, I'm this, I'm that, and you act morally and you ignore the really freaky, dark cult ideology that is also embedded in the priesthood of your worldview, whether you uphold those or not, whether you take those passages literally or not, those are different conditions we got to consider. Are there radical left-wing Marxist Jews running around in Israel and in America that are part of bringing this whole thing together? Absolutely. But could you say it's a Jewish conspiracy run by the state of Israel? No. That's where I jump off that. I could say the same about Islam, except here's the thing that's unique, okay? Is that Islam has a particular history that none of the other religions have. It's this. Since 9/11, 2001, documented. You can look this up on public registries. You can collect it all. People have already done it, but you can go and do it yourself. 45 to 47,000 jihadi terrorist attacks taking place. These are people with fire in the mind, revolutionary movement, right? Violence. We believe in violence as our way of installing our dogma. Okay. Revolutionary movement, 47,000 plus jihadi terrorist attacks in over 70 different countries, 70 since 9/11. Physical, violent attacks where people die as a result, including usually the killer. And yes, we got a problem with some school shootings in America. And I got a lot of questions about the whole problem with the young white guy that's feeling a little bit oppressed. Who's installing that dogma into his head? Well, bring in your Marxist left-wing professors, indoctrinating with victim mentality, guys that shoot at these kids or shoot these schools up. What about the pharma blame for that? The cult of the medics, right? What about the whole idea that a lot of these guys could have been groomed to become the killers? But even if I were to grant you, okay, we've got some white guys shooting up some schools and we got some violence in America as a result. Add them all up, give them all over to this worldview that it's just this problem in white boys, and you're not even going to come close. You're not even going to come close in comparison to the level of violence that we've seen from this cult in the West. Why? Because they view us as an enemy. Why? Is it just because George Bush dropped some bombs? No, this goes well back thousands of years. These are ancient feuds, and they're also being financed and controlled by people well above the bar that don't ascribe to any of these beliefs. They want chaos and division and disorder in order to create the order out of the chaos. It's literally their motto, ordo ab chaos. And they look over there and they go, oh, we got, and yeah, they did. The high table did send some bombers over there to instigate and create and fund Hezbollah and fund Hamas and fund these groups. You'll find they're funded by Marxist groups, by the way, and also from Russia and also from Nazi factions. So you're going to sit there and this is what got confusing for me is I went, wait a minute. You've got this like Nazi propaganda that was pumped into the Arabic world for decades during and after World War II, right up to this day. Okay. It's as popular as the Spice Girls over there. All right. So we got that, but then you have like these groups like the PLO and Hamas and all these groups that are affiliated and gotten funding from self-admitted Leninist Marxist groups in the Middle East. Don't forget about what I told you about Giuseppe Mancini, the Young Turks, the Young Arab movement, the Young Irish, the Young Italy. What was that? That came from the high table. If you think they only put their propaganda little bomb off in the West, you're not seeing the world from the high perspective. They put that shit everywhere. That went off like a bomb in the human mind, and it affected everybody. And everybody kind of reacted a little differently and kind of put their own little twist on it. That's why I've always been saying all these isms are just different flavors of the same Gatorade, built and designed by the same power structure. So when I go around social media right now, especially in this war in the Middle East has been an interesting thing to watch. Whatever your take on the whole thing, or if you think Israel's approach to responding was over the top, or it doesn't, let's not go there. Okay. Look at this as a case study objectively, that you're going to sit back without emotion and you're just going to observe. You can't deny that there's a connection between these terrorist groups that are harming their own people in Palestine and the groups around the Middle East that have the same belief system from the same funding sources that are now coming in through mass immigration into Western countries. And they're not coming here to take part, my friends. They're coming here to take over from their own mouths to our ears. And again, not everybody, but I'm not seeing a huge reaction of fighting against it, which means, okay, to a certain degree, we're dealing with the tribalism of, well, it's my team, so I'm not going to critique my team, even though I disagree with them. There's some of that. But then there's people that like secretly are like, yeah, we really need to come here and take over and make Islam the dominant cult in the world. Now, they think they're unique in that regard, and they think they're doing it independently, just as a cult that's trying to gain supremacy, just like all the cults are. I mean, the Mormons want to convert everybody. The Christians want to convert everybody. The Catholics want to convert everybody. The Protestants want to convert everybody. The Buddhists want to convert everybody. Klaus Schwab wants to convert everybody. I don't know. Is he even still working? I don't know. The left wants to convert everybody. The woke right wants to convert everybody. Everybody's trying to convert everybody. Some do it better than others. Some do it without persuasion and just go right to violence as their method. But it's the same. So when you see this push where we have Nazi ideology, which Michael just broke down for you, came from the Thule Society, occult society. Just as I'm showing you the occult society, the Philadelphians breeded the far left, going as far back as the French Revolution, and I would argue even before. We saw the same thing. And now they're here. And I've got footage. I don't think I got the video here, but I've got footage from when there was these Free Palestine protests in Vancouver, where they were burning Canadian flags in the street in front of RCMP officers, and nobody got arrested. And they were shouting death to Canada right after saying death to Israel, death to America, death to Canada. I'm like, what did Canada get mixed up in this shit? What did Trudeau do to us? How are we part of this target now? Like, what happened, right? A lot of average Canadian has no idea. You're a target on the list. Why? Because you're a Western Christian nation. Even worse, you're a Western, you don't like the Christian nation thing? Fine, you're a Western secular country that believes in capitalism. Well, used to, now we're moving more socialism. But hey, funded by capitalism, pretending to be socialism, right? You're hated because you're not them, just like all cults. You're not a member of the Thule Society? Well, you can't be trusted. You're not a member of the Freemasonic societies? You're not part of the group. You don't know the secret handshake. And we're going to take you out by hook or by crook. Oh, you don't like our version of Christianity that we just made up yesterday out of the other 50,000 denominations of this fractured religion? Oh, well, then you're going to hell when you die, even though you claim to be a Christian, but you're part of the wrong group. So therefore, you're the target. It's the othering of the people. It's the tribalism that's weaponized. So when you've been able to brainwash and incubate, just like in North Korea, an entire culture and capture it and forget history in the Middle East, this is what pisses me off, is that cult, the particular Islamic cult that has taken power, was not the dominant or the only religion, cultural identity in the Middle East. I learned this from Arabic Jews, speaking to Arabic Jews, who they themselves would be like, yeah, Arabic is not even a thing. We used to have different names for our cultures, and I can't even remember them all. I'm not the scholar on this, but I'm hoping to have some of them on to break it down. When you go look at women in Lebanon, I posted this on my Instagram, just women in Lebanon back in the 70s and then today. Afghanistan, I can't remember all the dates, but you look at them in their original cultural attire, had a name you've never heard of, what their culture was named, what their religious beliefs were. A lot of them came from the Zoroastrian, Persian culture, right? And then they were taken over by Islamic ideology. So what I'm telling you is that what my research to this point has shown me is that Islam as a political, because it is not just a religion. We need to know this in the West. It's not just a religion. It is a political totalist philosophy. It is the same ingredients as the radical socialisms we're talking about, as the fascisms and the communisms. It's the same person, guys. It was just tailor-made for those people in that culture. And then it was weaponized and unleashed like a virus in the area. And then it was funded by forces both Middle Eastern and Western to become the central power. The Islamic Brotherhood is the number one secret society that the world needs to know about. And that's where you're going to start to open it up. And you're going to go back and see that there was collusion with these Templar factions and these Middle Eastern factions. And there's a whole story we didn't get to hear about. And now we fast forward in our current time, we don't know what the hell's going on. We don't know who the real enemy is. We don't understand what's not just on our doorstep, in our doorstep. Colluding with and allying with that same radical left that was born out of that Philadelphian Lodge. They're the same person applied to a different culture. It's a marriage made in hell. It's known as the unholy alliance. The Vatican's involved. The P2 Lodge, allegedly dissolved, but not a part of this. Our black robes here in the West. Couple handshakes with the black robes in the East. Because they want it international. And they know Islam isn't going to be playing fair here in the end. They're not going to go, well, you can use us to take down America, which we call the Great Satan, and all that. You can use us, but we are going to, we're going to turn on all you leftists and socialists and Marxists because we actually despise you. And we're going to take you out. And actually, there's historic precedent for this where the mosques outlived the manifestos many times in Middle Eastern history. And we know what happens to those leftist college students that are the useful idiots used, like Yuri Bezmenov was talking about, to bring in the socialism that sounds pie in the sky but turns out to be totalitarianism, they're the first ones line up and shot and put in jail. And then they never have understood why they got betrayed like that in history. It just keeps happening. Well, here's the thing. Not only do these ideologues that are out there pushing this agenda unknowingly or knowingly in the West, not only are they going to have to contend with their own on the radical left, but they're going to have to contend with Islam, of which they're cozying up with the combined project of destroying the West. That's why they're cozying up to them. It doesn't take rocket science to understand this. They have the same hatreds, the same enemies, the same victim consciousness, and the same revolutionary fire of the mind to overthrow the oppressors. That's the poison pill. And we're going to use violence to do it. We're going to weaponize your own freedoms against you. We're going to outbreed you, and we're going to take you over from within. And they're going to say it on the street corners and in the videos and in the statements publicly over and over again. And everybody in the West should go back to sleep and go, no, nothing going on with that. Don't be Islamophobic. Don't be. I'm not phobic of anything. I'm just like aware of danger that's real and being announced right to my face and demonstrable everywhere. Right? I'm aware of the danger of the cults I'm talking about. I'm aware of these other dangers. We're up against a multi-headed hydra of enemies that all want to see the West destroyed. They want to see freedom destroyed. Why? Because they want their cult of power to take over and dominate the world. So it's Game of Thrones. They're all coming in, and each one of those thrones fighting for the big Iron Throne, the Ring of Power, thinks they're going to just kind of use some strategic alliances to get ahead in the board game of risk that they're playing. And then in the end, they'll just wipe out that ally, just like the mafia, that you help me rob the bank. And then while you're packing the bag with the cash, you're like, choo, choo, right? It's the same thing. And we're all just going to sit back and go, like, if we do nothing, we're just going to have to watch the movie. There's going to be a horror movie as to see which side is going to win out against its former ally and then be the dominant one. Maybe it'll end up being a hybrid. I don't know. But it won't be good for people that are just average people wanting to live free and practice some sane religion and some, chill down the political stuff, make it more reasonable, make it about freedom, make it about prosperity. Just go back to basics, right? Give you the freedom to practice whatever religion you want, as long as you don't use it as a weapon of revolution in the country. The thing is we're kind of far in the battle here, and our ignorance is why we're here. Just like the ignorance of those people at the Jim Jones thing are where they are, which is 6 feet under, sadly. So I'm just here to warn you, and you can take it or not. It's kind of up to you, but you heard it here at least. Okay. You didn't hear it here first. There's tons of people who have been trying to warn the West about this for centuries. Okay. But here we are again. We're at this point in the movie. There are multiple forces looking to destroy your country and take it over and bring it into their cult doctrine. I'm just trying to give you the history of it and present the actual dangers that are there, and then give you a little bit more perspective here. So when I see this, it makes me remember what I'm just breaking down. And here it is. This is very quick. So what that is 60,000 Muslim young men in a stadium. I can't remember the exact country, but this was taken very recently. And they're all doing the Nazi salute and reciting the mantra of Islam. And the more you go into this connection between the Nazis and the Islamic world, the more your mind is going to be blown. Like, for example, this little gem that a lot of people aren't aware of, where Adolf Hitler and his top SS Nazi regime went to go and meet with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and form the alliance I'm talking to you about. Here you go.
Der Führer empfing den Großmufti von Jerusalem, einen der einflussreichsten Männer des arabischen Nationalismus. Der Großmufti ist das religiöse Oberhaupt der Araber in Palästina und gleichzeitig deren oberster Richter und Finanzverwalter. Wegen seiner nationalen Haltung verfolgten ihn die Engländer erbittert und setzten auf seinen Kopf einen Preis von 25.000 Pfund aus. Auf abenteuerlichen Wegen gelangt er über Italien nach Deutschland.
So that's actual from the museum, the war museum footage of the meeting. They're talking in German, obviously. You could probably pick out some of the terms in there, like Palestine, Deutschland, right? The agreements. A lot of people forget that Germany, even during First World War, was allied with the Turks. So there's been always like an alliance between Turks and Germans. Okay, not always. I'm just saying that's interesting. Didn't know that. A lot of people didn't know that after these agreements, which the Mufti and Hitler, they had an amicable agreement of an alliance because they were looking at expanding the Nazi program to the Middle Eastern region because, of course, exterminating the Jews in Poland and Europe and changing the order of Europe wasn't where this just started and ended. To Hitler, he needed to do this worldwide. And what better way than to form an alliance with people that shared the exact same views over there in the Middle East? And then there begins. Now, when you get into the Bush doctrine and you know the Bush senior connection to the Nazis and the funding by his father, Prescott Bush, and everything, and you know that whole history, Skull and Bones, and here we go, Templar, Skull and Bones, Templar, right? It goes all the way back. You're starting to realize the real occult connections here. Now, what if I told you, let's see if I'm timing this right in my presentation, that a lot of this was brought to you by the Vatican. And not just the Vatican as the public entity, the actual building or some of the priests. I'm talking about the cabals that infiltrated and took it over, just like they did the Masonic lodges. The Vatican was probably one of the first stops of this cabal. So you got to read about the Vatican rat lines, right? And there's many books on the subject. I'll just go through this with you. Yeah, this is a statement in one of these documents. I'll bring it up for you guys later, or I can put the links for you. And it's just point 15 of this document that's breaking down this exact thing. This is Dragonovic's sponsorship of these great quislings definitely link him up with the plan of the Vatican to shield these ex-Ustasi nationalists until sometime as they are able to procure them for the proper documents to enable them to go to South America. So this is where they're discussing the Vatican rat lines. The Vatican, undoubtedly banking on the strong anti-communist feelings of these men, is endeavoring to infiltrate them into South America in any way possible to counteract the spread of red doctrine. It has been reliably reported, for example, that Dr. Vrankic has already gone to South America and that Ante Pavelic and General Kraken, I can't read that, are scheduled for an early departure to South America through Spain. All these operations are said to have been negotiated by Dravonacic because of his influence in the Vatican. So, of course, this is just sort of like some declassified memos talking about this, the reason why, that's the official reason why, well, the Vatican was trying to get rid of the red commies. Well, again, go to michaelcesarian.com, go to articles, look up one called The Red Papacy, and that's the whole history about the collusion between the Vatican and the Reds, the communists, and how that got infiltrated into the Vatican. And then when you understand what Michael was mentioning and what I've been mentioning about how the competition between the fascists and the communists was not about ideology. It was about the end result of the application of the ideology and how it should be applied. And the Germans just said, we can do it better than the Russians can do it, or the Italians. We like our version of fascism better than the Italians, and we like our version of socialism better than the communists. So it's a gang turf war over the same turf. So when you see the Vatican going, well, we're going to sponsor some Nazis, put them in different countries, because we're just trying to, they're very effective against communism and we're just trying to fight communism. This is just bullshit. This is bullshit. They're on the same team. And I think this is just pictures now. Yeah, we're just going to go through these. The Vatican collusion here. So it's not just the Islamic world that cozied up to Hitler and the Nazi ideology. these guys helped bring it into being. The Knights of Malta, right? You got to get into that history. We'll just go through these. Pope Pius being lauded through the halls in Germany, right? There's a book you need to learn about, the Wehrmacht priests, Catholicism and the Nazi War of Annihilation. There's a book to check out. Here's the clergy with the salute you just saw those young Arabs making. That's another occult symbol, by the way. Atenist goes back to Egypt, back to Rome. Top priests and nuns, both in Germany and from Italy, coming in, hang out with the Führer. He was a celebrity to them, leading the new Christian movement. Here we go. All those nice Vatican priests up there saluting the Nazis, saluting the Heil Hitler. I got dozens of these. And not just pictures. You're like, whoa, these are all out of context. No, it shows it plain as day. And then you got to read all the memoirs and all the history and all the documentation since. Actually go through the Nuremberg evidence packages. Don't just watch the trial. Go through what was presented. And then you can go even deeper than that. Michael does that in that Thule Society presentation. Emissary after emissary. Here's a bunch of local monks, Germany, hanging out with the SS. Here's College of Cardinals meeting it up with the top Nazis right there in Germany. College of Cardinals, you all know who they are. Right? Look at those priests. Sieg Heil. And what are you hearing from your woke right now? Oh, we need to start Christian nationalism and socialism. It's the only way to fight off the commies. Huh? It's so old it's new. You guys aren't fooling anybody. This is a quote, My New Order, Adolf Hitler, proclamation to the Catholic German nation at Berlin, February 1933. The national government will regard it as its first and foremost duty to revive in the nation the spirit of unity and cooperation. It will preserve and defend those basic principles on which our nation has been built. It regards Christianity, I'm not going to read the brackets, I'll explain that in a second, as the foundation of our national morality and the family as the basis of national life. This is all just propaganda. Whoever published this, they're kind of defending Christianity. They're going to defend the Protestants and be like, well, when he was talking about Christianity being the foundation of Nazism, he of course meant the wicked Catholicism, not the Protestant form. But, you know, you got to contend with the history of Ireland to learn about the evils on both sides of that they're never going to be honest about. Sadly. And then, of course, you can go and read this book. I actually have a PDF version of it, but you can get it anyway. It's called The Vatican's Holocaust. And you need to start getting into the work of this man, Baron Avril Manhattan. He was a Knight of Malta. He was a whistleblower. He was an insider. He smelled a rat. And he wrote numerous books at a very academic level documenting the history of the corruption that took place in the Vatican, its collusion with the Nazis, with the socialists, and the corruption that ensued afterwards. And you can read his book, Vatican Billions, as well as this one, The Vatican Holocaust. This is talking about the Vatican's role in the genocide in Yugoslavia. And yeah, they say it's the sensational account of the most horrifying religious massacre of the 20th century. And now we've got these quotes. So let me just see where we're at. We're at 2:30. Okay, I think I can wrap this up in the next 30 minutes. And I know this one's going like 3 hours, a bit long. There's so many segues, so many things to bring up, so many red herrings, so many minefields I got to go through when I'm presenting this stuff. I can anticipate everybody's reaction already. But again, just look at it like, here I am giving you some new threads to go check out, and then you confirm them. Let me know where you sit. So I'm going to read some Hannah Arden because she was mentioned in the first video that launched this show today. And I just thought about, yeah, right. She's got a great She's a Jewish writer, so if you've got a problem with that, you can tune out. For those of you that are, on that camp, I'm not part of that camp, and I'll read anybody. And I don't think that's the big problem you think it is. I think what you need to do is study the weight of the argument that's being made, the weight of the facts that are being presented to you. And what she is a student of totalitarianism, and you need to hear her warnings and her descriptions and the merit of her work. I believe in merit. The merit of her work is what's going to shine through for you, hopefully. And give us some warnings, give us some things that are familiar sounding that will help us understand that the same program that was attempted and installed in various other countries before us is being installed right now. And that there is a way around it. But it requires that layer of personal responsibility and a sincere desire for the truth and the facts, not just what feels good, not just what sounds good, not just what we want to be true, not just what we hope to be true, but what is actually true. So it takes a deep commitment to get to this level of understanding, in my opinion. And so let me take you through some of these quotes, and then I've got some points on each one. They all give us a tremendous amount of insight. This one is from her book, The Origins of Totalitarianism. She says, in an ever-changing, incomprehensible world, the masses had reached the point where they would, at the same time, believe everything and nothing. Let me know if any of this sounds familiar, guys. They think that everything was possible and that nothing was true. Mass propaganda discovered that its audience was ready at all times to believe the worst, no matter how absurd, and did not particularly object to being deceived because it had held every statement to be a lie anyhow. This is what I'm hearing in the comments these days, guys. This level of jaded pessimism. And I'm telling you, the diagnosis is that it is these people that adopt this are victims of propaganda. That's what totalist propaganda is designed to do. And I am witnessing it happen in real time. And I hope you witness it with me, because it gives you great insight. She continues, the totalitarian mass leaders based their propaganda on the correct psychological assumption, psychological keyword, that under such conditions, the fog of war, one could make people believe the most fantastic statements one day and trust that if the next day they were given irrefutable proof of their falsehood, they would take refuge in cynicism. Instead of deserting the leaders who had lied to them, they would protest that they had known all along that the statement was a lie and would admire the leaders for their superior tactical cleverness. I'm literally watching this unfold before my eyes right now. Here's another good one. The result of a consistent and total substitution of lies for factual truth is not that the lie will now be accepted as truth. It's not as simple as that. And truth be defamed as lie, which is what we're seeing right now in the media, but that the sense by which we take our bearings in the real world and the category of truth versus falsehood is among the mental means to this end is being destroyed. So she's saying the result of consistent and total substitution for lies in place of factual truth is not the biggest problem with that is not just that people will now believe lies as truth and vice versa. That's not even the biggest problem. That's not even the biggest payload of that weapon. The biggest payload of that weapon of psychological warfare is that our very premise of our worldview and our self-view about the nature of truth and reality is itself destroyed. Do you see the level of insanity coming out of the conspiracy world right now? And how does nobody see that a lot of the new conspiracies that are being peddled by these grifters are about contending with the facts of reality itself? They're resurrecting ancient Gnostic ideology. They're resurrecting arguments coming out of the Philadelphia Lodge, bro. Does anybody remember things like flat earth, space is fake, the whole thing? You ever remember that? Our reality, you got our whole reality wrong. It always happens every time. Ridiculous. The more ridiculous, the better. The more ridiculous and unrealistic, the better. Magical child thinking. Evasion of reality. Reality doesn't even exist anymore. That's what you're being told. Who's telling you that and why? And you wonder why our reality is cursed? Why our reality is being ruled by evil for the most part? It's because we all cursed reality and we didn't want to pay attention to it. And we condemned it. And we said no. And we got that from our priests who learned it from ancient cults, who transferred it to you like a virus for thousands of years. And then that's grown like mold, has corrupted the best. And then the enemy sees this and goes, oh, this is the time to walk right in the door. And we're like, oh, can I get the door for you? Please just walk right in. And you wonder why. Well, she just told you. That's why. They want your mind controlled. And to control the human mind, you need to distort their reality. Reality distortion. It's psychological warfare 101. It's not just the lie, the thing, the event. Oh, did they shoot Charlie Kirk? Was it Israel that did it? Well, it's not about that. It's about, are we confusing your sense of reality yet? Have we gotten you off balance psychologically? Because then you're primed for the next payload. Here's a good one. Evil thrives on apathy and cannot exist without it. What a statement. Many philosophers made similar statements. It's probably where she read it from, but she's echoing it in a great way. Evil thrives on apathy and cannot exist without it. How many people do you know right now aren't, let alone getting to the level of the debate and the discussion that we're at right now? This is like light years ahead of the average normie out there, right? Who's just scrolling Facebook. You're already light years. They're already glazed over when you're talking about this. It's way too deep. But I mean, this is simple enough. The apathy. Evil thrives when good men do nothing. Well, why do good men do nothing? Well, because of the apathy. Keep turning that cheek. See what you're going to get. The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. Like, they're not even that cunning. They're just like most people, like, look at the pandemic. Look at so many of these other instances that have happened. The people you knew and loved that you thought, oh, I've known this guy for 20 years. How the hell is he like reporting me to the police for having a barbecue? All of a sudden, what's going on? He's reporting my Facebook posts and now I've been arrested. Like, what happened to Jerry? You know, we used to know each other, man. We go way back. It's because Jerry didn't make his mind up at any point in time about anything. He's on nobody's side and everybody's side at the same time. He stands for nothing. Jerry stands for nothing and will fall for anything and is now converted into an NPC that is working against both his and your best interest. He just doesn't know it. And that's what she's pointing out. It's the ignorance factor. Most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. They're just that unattentive. It's so crazy. Such a powerful statement. Here's another one. There's a strange interdependence between thoughtlessness and evil. That's what she's harping on in her books. It's one of the contributions she made that was, for me, very unique. She pointed out this thoughtlessness, the glazed over, blank out. We talk about it, the blank stares when you start talking facts, or when you interrupt their little memorized mantra when they're like, what, you support private property and free speech and you want to be able to defend yourself and just do whatever you want? Well, you want to keep your wages? You don't want to give it over to the government? You're a fascist. Go, well, please, could you define fascist for me? Because I don't think it means what you think it means, bro. And they're like, they just stand there glitching like your computer screen when it freezes. Information overload. That's thoughtlessness. There's no thought. They're repeating mantras and slogans. We see it all the time. Charlie Kirk exposed this in these young kids who are being victimized by their professors who are teaching them Philadelphia Lodge, Club of Rome doctrine. There's an interdependence between thoughtlessness and evil. Next, although tyranny may successfully rule over foreign peoples, It can stay in power only if it destroys, first of all, the national institutions of its own people. Bruh, look at that. Look at that. Tyranny can successfully rule over foreign peoples. Hitler can go invade Poland. But in order to truly stay in power, you got to do what all our Western politicians are doing to us right now. Is destroy, what'd she say? Destroy first all the national institutions of its own people. She's not using a crystal ball. She's not using black magic. She's not a psychic. She's got a brain just like you and I. She lived it, so definitely lived experience would drive somebody to go and do the level of necessary research to come to these conclusions. But if a mind can produce that statement and that identification of what's going on, to me, that's how I know. That's how I can identify. I'm like, yeah, that's a level of insight that only someone who's experienced can give you. It's like if you're listening to someone that's been a victim of a really horrible crime, like maybe a break and enter in Ontario, where they're all told to leave their keys on the doorstep for the criminals and just allow themselves to be abused. And you go through that traumatic situation, and then you listen to them describe the nature of criminality versus some guy who's sipping his Starbucks latte, never even been in a fist fight in his life, never had any real existential pressure on his mind, never had any physical pressure on his body, never had to work a day in his life, is sitting there educating you about what evil is and what new reforms we need to the police and the government. The biggest idiots in the room that are the loudest. Yeah. That's this. That's who they bet on. That's who they bank on to make their enterprise come into fruition. The enterprise of control. Here's a great one. Violence. Remember I told you I've been using this slogan lately. I got it from the video I shared. It was like a month ago now. I did that show on fascism. I brought it up. It was this woman from China who fled China, wanted to come to the West to live under these values, not the Communist Chinese Party values. And she came and told us, wake up, Western man, wake up. They're doing it here, what they did to my people. The same thing. They believe in violence, she said. That's how you'll know them. They believe in violence. When she says that, I don't think people really hear what she's saying. She's saying it in broken English. She's trying to communicate to you this. Violence is an expression of impotence. If this is your modus operandi, if you lefties out there that have been either mind controlled or self-mind controlled into justifying political assassination and brutal murder of someone like a Charlie Kirk or a Donald Trump or any of these people you just don't like because you're watching, like, I don't know, late night comedy a lot and CNN a lot, and you're being programmed, you don't actually look into it, and you're being fed propaganda to create exactly the revolutionary flame in your mind to then bring you into your violent tendency to want to do something about it. The reason that violence, when you see violence as the method, and I'm not talking about like the violence that may be required in self-defense. That's different. That's a different discussion. I don't even like using that word violence when I'm talking about that. Force being used to stop somebody from using violence against you, violating you. That's what violence root word comes from, is violate. They believe in violating you. They believe in violence. Well, we know where it comes from. Little man syndrome. Little woman syndrome. I'm an oppressed victim. I'm going to use violence to stop it. It's part of the ideological package. Here we go. More. The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, i.e., the reality experience, or the reality of experience, and the distinction between true and false, i.e., the standards of thought, no longer exist. She kind of squeezes a lot in there, but they're all super important points. So let me help break it down here. Maybe I'll put this view up so it's a little easier. the ideal subject of totalitarian rule. So this is where we now need to zoom to an even another level of not identifying them by, oh, they're an Islamist, they're a Jesuit, they're a Mason, they're a communist, they're a fascism, they're a Nazi, they're a fascism, they're a fascist. You're a fascism, man. They're a fascist, they're a Nazi. We need to zoom past that now. This is now the next door that's going to open once you get to here in the maze. That you're not even properly identifying things if you're looking on the level of, oh, it's not just the ideal subject of totalitarian rule. The issue is not that they're a convinced Nazi or a convinced communist. It's easy to convince people of any kind of political rhetoric, really. Now she's giving you the keys to how you truly identify this left and right, this good and evil, this moral, immoral, this I believe in violence versus nonviolence. She says, but for people, this is how you identify them, whom the distinction between fact and fiction no longer exists, between reality of experience and non-reality no longer exists. The distinction between true and false, the standards of thought no longer exist. There's your poison pill. She's getting under the hood and going, don't look at the shiny car. Look under the hood at the engine that's powering this damn thing. And now you're going to learn about how that car works. Just seeing a nice car drive by, you're on Joe Schmo level. You got that car to pull over. You got to open the hood. You got to get in and understand how it works. People say they're Nazis all the time. People say they're communists all the time. People pretend they're not, and they like to pretend. But I can smell it a mile off. You don't even have to tell me, because I can see this immediately in your rhetoric, in your comments, in the way you're talking to me, in what you're posting, what you're advocating for. I'm seeing there's no care for the distinction between fact and fiction. In fact, fiction is preferable. The reality, be damned. There is no reality. That's an illusion, man. The distinction between true and false, we don't need true and false. White, straight males invented this. Math is racist. Right? This kind of shit. Oh, boys and girls, they can be a blend of anything. We don't need any distinctions of male and female in order to propagate the human species anymore. We got computers, we got AI, we got genetic research, we got quantum dots, we got all this shit now. We can just create artificial humans and artificial wombs. We don't need the old lost art of two biological primates meeting to the middle and having a kid. We don't need that. We're going to redefine everything. Why would you want to do that? I'm not even listening to what you're, I'm just like, why would you want to do that? Traumatized psyches. Primed for propaganda by the very best. And when there's no standards of thought and we just let everybody win now, there's no meritocracy anymore. Well, now what are you going to get? You're going to get a bunch of slop is what you're going to get. Not rooted in facts, not rooted in truth, not rooted in wisdom. We'll lock away all the wisdom showers and promote all the lunatics. Right. There you go, man. Lots there. That's a great one. Let's do another one. So many. Totalitarianism in power invariably replaces all first-rate talents. This is as a martial artist, this is very important to me. Okay? Because there is a difference between a white belt and a black belt. What's the difference? It's not genetics. It's not how much money you make. It's not what religion you are. It's not your gender. It's not your age. It's not any of those things. It's about how much work and sacrifice are you willing to put in to developing and honing a skill that you previously did not possess, to the point where you become the skill. That's the level of expertise you can achieve. That's a black belt. A white belt is not that thing. There is no equality in that situation. Are we dealing with those two human beings on a human level as equal? Yeah. But are you given the same merit and responsibility? And are we going to let white belts teach the class now on Saturday mornings? Nope. You got to earn it. You got to become the thing. You got to become worthy of the position of teaching other people something. You don't just get to show up because you exist, put a belt on, and you're that thing now. Right? So I'm an advocate for meritocracy. Totalitarianism is not an advocate for meritocracy. In fact, it wouldn't survive in a meritocracy. Totalitarianism wouldn't survive in a meritocracy. Let's do the quote. Totalitarianism in power invariably replaces all first-rate talents, regardless of their sympathies, with those crackpots and fools whose lack of intelligence and creativity is still the best guarantee of their loyalty. The Illuminati roundtables want loyalty to the ring. They want to take your talents and use them for their purposes. You want to join that cult up the road? They're going to love to have you because they're going to want to find out what are your talents and how could you better serve our hegemony? How could you make our enterprise a better success? And we just can't wait. We just can't wait to join one because when you join one of those cults, you don't need to have meritocracy in your own life now. No responsibility. Don't have to make yourself of anything. The cult already took care of that for you. Now you just got to serve the cult blindly. Kill who they want you to kill. Kill off yourself, your mind, your reason. And you drank the blood. You did the drugs. You did the rituals. You got knighted into the thing. Now you're promoted. Now they're sending you off and you're running France now as a country, or you're leading the new project with the United Nations. You're on flotillas now with lots of fans, shooting a bunch of Hollywood for us. You're making movies, right? Like that's how it goes. So you get the dullest minds, the fools, the easily swayed, the weak ones that are going to run all your stuff. And then you wonder why your civilization is crumbling all around you. It's the mark of totalist thought applied directly. That's what it is. And they do it because they know the fool will be loyal. The intelligent man will always be on his own path. They can't control that. They don't like geniuses. Geniuses are mavericks. They step outside of the authoritative environment of academia and the priesthood as well. And we don't like those free thinkers. We've been locking them up for centuries and burning them at the stake for centuries. Thank you very much. We don't need any more genius free thinkers anymore. Why? Because they get in the way of totalists. The true goal of totalitarian propaganda is not persuasion, but organization of the polity, of the body politic. What convinces masses, the crowd, are not facts, and not even invented facts, but only the consistency of the system of which they are presumably part. I have just described the modus operandi of every cult adherent of every variant form for all of time right up to the present moment. That fact points it out. That statement points out what's under the hood of that car. The true goal of these totalitarian propagandas is not to bring kumbaya to the world. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not even to persuade you. They're trying, but they really are looking for, they know, hey, it's not just about persuade. I want organization. People like organization. It doesn't even matter what it's organized about. If you're living a chaotic life, if your psyche is chaotic and plagued with depression and anxiety and uncertainty, you are ripe for the plucking for these wolves in sheep's clothing that see you in that psychological condition. And they go, we just got to give you an organized structure, a bunch of hoops to jump through, and you'll sign up for it. And you won't even look twice at what we're telling you to do. Because we know from our knowledge extensively of psychology, what convinces the masses, the mindless masses, the NPCs, are not facts. It's not even invented facts that convince you. We know you have no time for facts and reality. In fact, you're forming a collective and a group specifically to evade reality. So because we know that, you are the prey animal. You will receive the payload of our psychological weapons. And we know you're going to be consistently loyal to us, which is the number one quality we love so much, is obedience and loyalty. Only the consistency needed is this, just a system that you're part of that's organized. That's all you really need. You don't even need to know what it is. That's why you got all these Looney Tunes people going out there, and they're finding that when they're starting to see the LGBT protest merging with the Free Palestine protest, that the Free Palestine protest down in Ottawa is kicking the shit out of all the LGBT protests and telling them to fuck off and get away, and your fight is not our fight. You don't represent us. And all they're like, what? We're your best friends. And the Muslims are like, you're nothing. Get out of our face. We despise you. And they're like, what? What happened here? Yeah, because you didn't read the memo about this, about how it works. You've been sold lies. Men have been found to resist the most powerful monarchs and to refuse to bow down before them, but few indeed have been found to resist the crowd, to stand up alone before misguided masses, to face their implacable frenzy without weapons and without folded arms, to dare a no when a yes is demanded. And then she's writing about someone named Zola. I'm not really sure. Sasha Man was Zola. She's just giving an example of someone who was that for her. And we do have these people that do have the balls to do it. But it's funny how historically men have risen up and overthrown all kinds of tyrants, only to replace them shortly after with another tyrant. But going against the crowd, few men have risen to that challenge. That's the challenge of challenges. That's what guards the treasure of the dragon, is to be able to do that. That's why you're not getting a lot of truth from your local favorite podcasters, by the way. They're terrified to lose their position. They're terrified to have their income ruined. See, I'm in a different position simply because I've already had my income ruined by doing this. I've already had my reputation tarred and feathered by doing this. I've already lost all my careers in Hollywood and movies and everything by doing this. So I don't really have much else to lose. And it's because I can't live with my conscience by selling out to the masses in the crowd and just going along what they want. I could have a way more popular podcast. I could be making a shitload, way more money. I have all the skills to do it. I have the ability to do it, but I'm not going to do it to that degree. I'm going to do it through meritocracy, and look where I'm at. And I'm fine with it, because I'd rather be able to sleep at night and look at myself in the morning and feel proud that I didn't fall before the crowd. I didn't fall as many great men have fallen. And that's something to be proud of, I personally think. The outstanding negative quality of the totalitarian elite is that it never stops to think about the world as it really is and never compares the lies with reality. So now she's giving you what we're actually seeing in front of our very eyes, which is the implosion of all of these psychological operations and payloads. And the biggest, I told you earlier, evil is non-empathetic, non-creative, and is arrogant and has hubris. These are the weaknesses. And those things breed this weakness. That is our hope, which is why I'm not black-pilled. Because the outstanding, no matter how negative it is, the qualities totalitarian elite, they never stop to think about the world as it really is and never compare the lies with reality. They can't even keep track of their lies. That's why my job is so damn easy. I can just go, oh, wait, you just said this over here, and now you're saying this. You're lying. Done. Put it out. We're doing it live. It's a pretty easy job. So this is one of their weaknesses. Take notes. I've been saying take notes, document everything. I've been saying that for a while, because this is the weapon. This is the arrow in your quiver that has that silver tip on it that can pierce right through that vampiric heart of lies. The facts of reality This is her summing up my entire philosophy of the show, which is truth wins. The truth is right. Most of us are probably wrong. Look at that as your shining light on the hill. Hey, that's an allusion to the sun, by the way. Talking about allegories. That's your compass. That's your compass point. That's another crucial thing to identify. It'll also help you properly identify the enemy, even when they're wearing sheep's clothing. You will know them by their fruits. The last century has produced an abundance of ideologies that pretend to be keys to history, but are actually nothing but desperate efforts to escape responsibility. So once again, identifying what's under the hood. It's all masked by all these like, well, we got to go free those poor people over there. And we got to stop this evil thing going on over here. And we got to redistribute the wealth. And we got to end the climate change. And we got to stop the, this and that. And we got to fight together. And we got to do it as one. We got to have a revolution. And we got to overthrow the thing. And it just keeps going. And you go, well, are you sure this is really all those things? Or is there something else behind it? Like, it's never about the thing. It's never about the thing. It's about something else. The thing is the disguise, the lie that you told your mom as to the reason why you stole the cookies from the cookie jar when she knows you just wanted some fucking sugar in your belly, buddy. I know how you work. I know why you stole the cookies from the cookie jar. Stop making it seem like you had some noble cause for stealing the cookies from the cookie jar. We all know why you stole the cookies, all right? We all know why you want socialism and totalism installed in your country. It's not going to work out the way you think, but we know why you think it will. Because you're motivated by the escape of responsibility. Can smell it, can see it. It's right down to your gait pattern. I can tell. And so could she. That's why she wrote the book on it. So the jig is up, all right? The most striking difference between ancient and modern sophists, or cultists, as I prefer to call them, is that the ancients were satisfied with a passing victory of the argument at the expense of truth, whereas the moderns want a more lasting victory at the expense of reality. We're back to the disdain for the reality principle, the fear of reality. Think about that. The most striking difference between ancient and modern sophists is that the ancients were satisfied with a passing victory of the argument that they're trying to install at the expense of truth. So what she thinks, they wouldn't mind just outright lying to you and just hoping that you wouldn't notice it's a lie, and then they bypass the truth and install their dogma. Today, though, she's saying they know that doesn't last for long, because over time, as we're seeing now to a certain degree, the lie unravels. People start to see it. It's just so obvious. And then they go, oh, well, yeah, that was all bullshit. It's like that magician that tried desperately, and maybe he fooled you the first time he showed you his card trick, but then the second, third, fourth time you start to notice the jig, and then it doesn't work on you anymore, right? So it's like we've moved it now. Like the totalitarians of our time, they're trying to have a more lasting victory at the expense of reality itself. How does she have a crystal ball? Is she a psychic? Who is this? Does she live like today? Is she watching current headline? Like, how does she know this? It's because Playbook known. That's why. Playbook is known, guys. This kind of propaganda demonstrates one of the chief characteristics of modern masses. They do not believe in anything visible. In the reality of their own experience, they do not trust their eyes and ears, but only their imaginations. Most of the shit we believe is just in our heads. They do not trust their eyes and ears, but only their imaginations. Which is why when you try to ask people to define things, they can't, because it's in their imagination. The bridge between the mythical world, the right brain, and the logical world, the left brain, the wires got crossed. That's what propaganda does. That's what cults do. If you could just go, please blow up all these buildings and chop off all these people's heads, you're going to get 72 virgins the moment you die. You're going to be in paradise. And oh, you know what, guys? If you drink the Kool-Aid and give it to your kids, we're going to be liberated. We're going to be in the 9th dimension above human. What about that? See, everything's about the afterlife. Everything's about the spirit world, which is why this life is suffering. We're living in our imaginations. And there's a positive side to your imagination, but can it be weaponized to work against your best interests in, I don't know, actual reality? Absolutely it can. I'm here to tell you, it can. What convinces masses are not facts, and not even invented facts, there you go, but only the consistency of the system of which they are presumably part. So revolutionary action, more often than not, was a theatrical concession to the desires of violently discontented masses rather than an actual battle for power. Getting into the hood even more. The revolutionary flame, the Philadelphia Lodge, all these cults tried to invoke, and provoke is the best word. That's what I'm looking for. Provoke. More often than not was a theatrical concession. It's a play. All the world's a stage, yeah? To the desires of violently discontented masses. They're looking for the discontented, the malcontented, the drifters, people who've been abused. Sadly, a lot of these people that are going into these far left movements, they're physically, sexually abused victims, and they are also psychologically abused or drug abused. They're not in their right mind. And that's pretty evident, isn't it? You can literally see it. They're discontented. And then what do? They project the discontentment. They don't get taught the very founding principles that are unique to the West, that, well, your discontentedness with reality is actually something you can solve yourself. We got this thing called psychology and introspection and philosophy and thinking. And that's why we created a civilization for free thought, by the way, so that you could cure yourself of this problem that we know is built into the human condition. And you're going to need the freedom to think and reason and speak and have ideas and debates and work it out in order to work out your own inner existential meltdown scenario. So when they come and say, we got to take all that freedom away, what are they doing? They're preventing you from solving the problem of your discontentedness. And now you need the state to solve that problem for you, or you need the religion or the cult to solve that problem for you. You need the crowd to wave a bunch of signs and wear a bunch of fancy hats and have some slogans and paint their face and get on bullhorns and sound all tough, push some cops around and spit on the ground and cause a big fuss on the ground in order to convince themselves that they're somehow dealing with their discontentedness and their anxiety and their fear of reality and their hatred of themselves. It's just not real. It's in your imagination. It's not even an actual battle for power in the end. The people using it that know everything I'm talking about, that use this mechanism, it's about power for them. But for the average revolutionist, they are on a level of escaping responsibility and reality that is incalculable. And they are pretending. It's a game of pretend. It's costumes. They're pretending that this is about overthrowing power and making it good for... It's not. It's never about the thing. It's always about this. These are the trends you're going to notice. All right, last one. This thing blocking me here. Could you stop blocking me? Hold on. There we go. The mob is primarily a group in which the residue of all classes are represented. The mob, the masses, the crowd. This makes it so easy to mistake the mob for the people, which also comprises all strata of society. While the people in all great revolutions fight for true representation, the mob always will shout for the strong man, the great leader. The mob hates society from which it is excluded, as well as parliament where it is not represented. So she's saying there is a distinction here between people rising up and protesting against actual totalitarianism in their midst. If you believe that's even the best method of dealing with it, that's another debate. But she's saying there's legitimate forms of revolution. There's legitimate forms of rising up, right? when you're going to overthrow tyranny, but you got to do it the right way. And you can't use this fire in the minds of men emotional response with a bunch of Marxist baggage as the way of, as your guiding light, to free yourself. We haven't been taught that liberation is an inside job, right? Some collective action always. But she's giving a little way for, well, there are also still just the people of the country that may be disgruntled and have a problem with what the government's doing, as in Canada, for example, or somewhere else. But then there's this mob, this radical mob, flame, the eyes are wide, they're yelling at the sky, emotional, rolling around on the ground, being violent, Molotov cocktails, your Antifa. That's the mob. And they behave like a mob. That's not legitimate. That's artificial, top to bottom. It's funded in an artificial way. And the people and the reasons they go to it is artificial because it's evasion of selfhood and responsibility that drove it there. It's evasion of reality that drove it there. It's disgruntled. You're not disgruntled with, these people aren't disgruntled with the patriarchy. They're not disgruntled with the government. They're not disgruntled with the World Bank and the Rothschilds. They're not disgruntled with the Jews or the Christians or the Illuminatis. They're not disgruntled. They're disgruntled with reality itself, the conditions that reality has set upon them. They don't like their body. They don't like something about themselves, probably a product of abuse, adultism, corrupt society, bad, toxic priestcraft, whatever, bad ideas. But it's always about the self. It's a reflection of how I feel. And then you're not taught about how to deal with feelings. You're not taught about how to be a mature, grown-up, fully developed, fully conscious person. You could be taught about that. The masters are already there. They've already written it down. We've already got it down to a science, but like they're not being presented to you in your schools or your churches or your synagogues or your mosques or in your media or in your movies or in your, you get little glimpses of it. But in order to piece it all together, you got to do what I did and spend a lifetime doing it. That when you go, look, what if I just, maybe this isn't even true or false, but what if as an operating principle, I changed my mindset from, I'm just waiting for someone to come and save me from my victimhood status to no one is coming to save me. And I am not a victim. Even if I was victimized, I am not a victim. A victim meaning an operational mindset by which I face the world and reality. The premise of my arguments internally is not coming from I'm a victim. What if you just flip it? That's what the greats have said. They go, well, that's the antidote. It's victim consciousness. So who is espousing victim consciousness? Well, for the Islamists, it's the West. For the woke left, it's the white man and Western civilization and the patriarchy and all the straight people. And in the woke right, it's the Jews. It's Israel. Every single person living there, right? So we all have our pariah. And then it goes from there too. It goes right into your personal life. Well, it's Jane at work. She won't stop victimizing me and stealing my pay upgrade, my pay raise. I'm going to go shoot the place up using my own revolutionary flame. They stole it from me, right? They stole my land. Everybody's land has been stolen. Stop whining about it. Are you going to defend the land you have right now in this timeline from the people that are literally trying to actually steal it from you? Again and again and again. And then someone else is going to come and try to steal it from them. And then someone else is going to steal it from them. It's nothing but that all through history, right up to this moment. Are you going to live your life right now as a victim of that? Or are you going to flip it on your head and go, look, nobody's coming to save me? Because you know what? If someone came to save me, it would actually rob me of the very needed experience that I need to have of how to save myself. Because that's why I came here. This is my worldview. That's why I came here in this life. I came here to explore. I came here to experience. I came here to to forge something out of myself, to create something out of myself. I came here to leave this world just a little better than when I got here. I came here to have children and teach them what I can. I came here to do whatever, all the things, to experience life to its fullest, to overcome great challenges, to become better, to learn more. Pick your poison. Why are you here? I didn't come here to be saved from this experience. I came here to have the experience in all of its good, bad, and ugly variations. And I refuse to be a victim. If you live by that principle, you're not running off to join secret societies. You're not running off to go and join some cult. You're not running off to go join the crowd. You've just individuated, as Jung would put it. And by doing that, you've empowered yourself. Because the person waiting for the savior and the person shirking responsibility is the person who's disempowered. That's why those are another part of the pattern of the psychological payload I'm talking about. That's why you want it. That's why you believe in it. That's why you fall for it. Right? And me, I'm not trying to come, I'm just like anybody that is in that form of consciousness of victim mentality, you are primed for what I'm talking about. You're primed for totalism to be installed. So the antidote is the opposite of what the enemy is putting into the mix. It's, I want the opportunity to save myself. I want the opportunity to experience this life in this time that I happen to incarnate in. And I know it's going to be a roller coaster of good, bad, and ugly and everything in between, but I want that experience, all of it, because all of that experience is what's going to make me come closer to the truth. Even if the truth is painful, even if it's ugly, even if it's hard, even if it's embarrassing, I'm going to do it. I want the opportunity to succeed. And in order to have the opportunity of success in any area, to feel the sense of victory, which is the human pioneering spirit, it's what produces the desire for freedom. In order to experience that, I need freedom in my life. In order to experience that, I have to overcome great challenges. I don't need to complain about them. And I'm not saying, guys, that in this mentality, you don't have room for the fact that you might be being victimized by criminals and psychopathic overlords and other competing groups that are trying to get in there and steal from you and break into your home and all that. Like, obviously, you're living in a friggin' madhouse on the edge of the Milky Way galaxy, and you're here to try to find some semblance of upgrade in this process. This is just kind of how I see it loosely. And so, I'm not saying there's no such thing as victims and victimizers, but it's about what it is. It's an attitude adjustment, a mindset shift into how you're going to deal with those things. How are you going to deal with evil? Are you going to let it victimize you? Everybody's saying they're victims and they're oppressed. I'm like, wow, that was easy. You just gave the other side all this power. You're letting evil win. That's all evil ever wanted you. All evil asks is like that moment in the movie 300 where King Leonidas standing there, was he munching on an apple or something, talking to this Persian king who's like, we're going to take your ass over. There's nothing you can do. I got a 1,000,000-man army coming up your ass. What do you got? Some hotcakes and like a couple hundred soldiers? You're screwed, buddy. All you got to do, mate, is get on your knees and kiss my bloody ring and do as thou hast commanded, and I'll give you all the glory and the riches and la 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 la. It's the devil's speech, right? He gives it to Leonidas. He's like, all I require, Leonidas, is that you kneel. And Leonidas just so brilliant. He sit there, takes a little munch on the apple. He's like, yeah, that's going to be a bit of a problem. That is the attitude that takes down the totalitarianism. Uncompromising. It's what's required to overthrow evil. See, the reason why everybody's all freaked out about when they see someone fighting back against evil. And they're like, whoa, that was a bit much fighting back against evil. Are you going to show some mercy to the evil ones? It's probably because they haven't really faced evil and understand that you're not dealing with empathy here. You're not dealing with the same stuff you're made of. You're dealing with murdered souls, self-murdered souls. You're dealing with non-creative, non-empathetic, non-merciful. What does Aragorn say on the wall to the elves that came to help them fight in Helm's Deep? He says in Elvish to them, he says, show them no mercy, for you shall have none. They shall show you none. Right? We just talked about this on Unslaved. It motivated me greatly. You have to be relentless against this evil, and more so within your own mind. Okay, I'm not talking about beating yourself up and sadomasochism or any of that stuff, self-abuse. I'm just saying, when you identify that poison pill in yourself, in your own psyche, you must show it no mercy. You crush it with facts. You crush it with truth. This is how I beat depression in my life. I crushed it into powder by showing putting it under the light of reality that scared the shit out of me. The solution scared the shit out of me. I had to face things I never wanted to face. But when I did it, it crushed into powder, never to return to the level that it used to. We're all human. We have our moments. But now everything's in finally proper context. And that's a victory I'll have for the rest of my days. That's where I get my strength from, was the victories I had over my own mind. And I still must have. It's not about my victories over other people. It's about that, about the victory over the lie within. Truth and freedom are connected. Lies and totalitarianism are connected. Lies and slavery. It's easy to say, well, I don't fall for any lies and I don't believe in slavery, while you're advocating lies and promoting slavery without knowing it. It's easy. That's what the warnings are showing us. The truth and freedom are the hard part. That's why our world is not saturated in truth and freedom. It's saturated in lies and tyranny and slavery of many different forms. Psychological slavery, emotional slavery, slavery to people in your own personal life, slavery to powerful oligarchs and dynastic satanic families that are watching us all play like a bunch of mice in a maze that they get a delight from. Energy vampires, here to farm the loosh, couldn't give a shit. When you're facing that, you had better master your own dragons. You had better get rid of victim consciousness, even when you're outnumbered, outgunned. See, that was the difference in Leonidas's perspective in that. I know it's a movie, I know it's a story, but it's got precedence in our lore for a reason, that story. Is it encapsulates the Western spirit, which is the spirit of freedom, the spirit of humanity. I know you're going to come into my town and tell me that I got to get on my knees and kiss the ring and convert and do all the shit. But there's going to be a freaking problem. The problem is I'm ready to die to preserve truth and freedom. And I know you're ready to kill to install tyranny and lies, but I ain't bound to nothing or no one. From my cold dead hands do you pry this sword? Which means it ain't going to be an easy lunch that you thought it was. And sometimes, my friends, that level of courage is enough to turn away the bully. It's enough to turn away the enemy. It's enough for them to respect you, enough to go, you know what? I like this guy. I like this guy. You know the Russian mobster, when you start fighting back. I kind of like this guy. Because evil respects power. And when they see you exhibiting authentic power, when there's no rational reason for you to express it, when you're surrounded and outgunned or whatever, you're tied to a chair in the interrogation room, when the Khmer Rouge is grilling you about your fucking Facebook posts, And you're like, yeah, here's the line in the sand, and I don't give a shit, and you'll never break me, and I'm not bowing or kneeling or kissing any rings. So I ain't no victim. And I know that I'm made of the stuff of the universe. So in this life or the next, I'm going to have my vengeance. So fuck off. Like you can't negotiate with that. You can't install tyranny in a society of people and children that are raised with that force of that warrior in them. And the reason we're getting so plundered, and the reason is because instead we've installed victim culture, victim mindset, pass the buck, get rid of facing reality. So to fix it, you got to do the opposite. And that's where I'm going to leave it today, guys. I hope that helped. Study the totalitarian playbook, study the occult elements, check the sources. Evil's finished. Truth is going to win.